Welcome to the Blackout Show, presented by the Guillen Grid, a show about the Chicago White Sox baseball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll debate what's working and what's not on the south side of Chicago. It's old school versus new school baseball. And most importantly, we're keeping all the receipts.
Welcome into another edition of the Blackout Show. Slavko Bekovic here with Ozzy Jr., Gonzo, and Jay. We've got another great episode for you tonight. It's 8:01 Central Time, and the White Sox bullpen still hasn't blown a lead. So it's already a better start to the day than some of the other recent days. We're going to get into a lot of Drew Thorpe and a lot of White Sox prospects tonight. We've got Elijah Evans joining us in just a bit. The White Sox bullpen, I think 7 of their last 8 games they've blown now in all of their most recent losses. Just real quick, I wanted to get your thoughts before we bring Elijah on Drew Thorpe's debut last night in Seattle.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I was happy with it, Slav. I seen a little bit of control, getting some good arm side run. Everybody was geared up for the changeup. But when you hit the group chat talking about his cutter, I had to rewatch it. Look, like that was a pitch that he was commanding. That was something that he was getting through the strike zone. Had a few whips, actually. So I was pleased. Over 90 pitches through 5 innings. But, I mean, what can you ask for? The guy was at least mentally conscious about what he was doing. He wasn't just getting it and throwing it like a lot of young kids would try to do. I like what I've seen. If you want to get a rating, I would say 8.1 out of 10, to be honest with you.
Wow, that's pretty good. Okay. Gonzo, I want to hear Gonzo's take.
Here we go.
Yeah, I
here's a bunch of charts. Nobody knows how to read.
Yeah, we got to pull this chart up because obviously we heard all about the 70 grade that they put on this changeup, and he threw it 38% of the time, and that whiff rate was at 36.8%, which is very solid for a plus pitch there. And again, the thing that really concerns me more so is the fastball because, well, for one, with it being the low velocity, it's pretty straight, doesn't really have that much run at all, really. And it got hit hard, a couple of times when the second time through the lineup when they were adjusting to him. So for me, that's the concern is he really needs to develop that second plus pitch to really work with that changeup. But other than that, the stuff plays a bit. We got to see more of how he mixes and matches here. But from the debut, I like the mound presence. I was really satisfied with his debut.
Junior?
I love the mustache. Big fan of the mustache. I think that I saw a mature pitcher on the mound for being 23 years old from guys that we've seen being brought up. I think in baseball, we're so used to, again, because of the analytics and the stats, we want to see 99, 98 on the gun every single time. And we're getting more of a traditional pitcher, a guy that's going to throw strikes, that is in the low 90s, that is going to use more of the pitching ability than just dominating, batters. And I think that sometimes that's good enough. And when you look at his line, people wanted him to throw probably 9 scoreless innings. But if a person does this, 5 innings, under ERA under 2, 4 Ks, 2 walks, 2 runs and 3 hits. You do that 32 starts, you're a very, very rich man, and you are winning a lot of games for your team on a well-constructed team. So do I think that he's going to be an ace number 1 Cy Young? No, but you don't need that. You don't need a generational pitcher. So from what I've seen, I think that I would love to see his development. Again, I said in the group chat, I'm not a huge first changeup guy, but maybe his changeup is that special that it looked very developed on there. So again, developing a slider, and I mentioned in the group chat as well, maybe Bannister and the team feel like they can develop a slider and a cutter with him a lot easier than other pitches. But I thought he looked way more polished than guys that we've seen in the past. And I see why he was a major part of two major trades, Juan Soto and then Dylan Cease. A lot of years of control, but his career has started. I don't want to see him go back unless there's like a mechanical issue. I want to see him work it through. Yeah, he looked. I think he looked more. I hate people when people say, "Well, what does that mean?" Like mound presence. And when I talked to Ozzy this morning, we had breakfast together. That's what he talked about. Mound presence. It's your major league debut. It's like your first day on the job in the show. And he looked like he had been there before. Like he belonged. So I like that. So we're looking forward to the rest of the year having his starts. I hope that he stays healthy, and because that's going to be part of his development for years to come.
And
all right. So the reason everybody's listening and watching tonight is for this man right here. We welcome in Elijah Evans from Just Baseball Media and FutureSox to talk more about Drew Thorpe and the rest of the White Sox farm system, a much improved farm system over the last 18 months or so. Elijah, thanks for joining us. What was your takeaway last night from Thorpe's debut? I think from my perspective, the main question I have for you is, what did you see from him last night that you were surprised or not surprised to see, or maybe something that was different than what you're accustomed to watching with him in Birmingham this year?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to chopping it up about prospects. I watch a lot of minor leagues, so I'm definitely all in on the prospect side of things these days. Honestly, Thorpe was good, and I know he can be better. I think that was my biggest takeaway. Like he was good. I think it's you can't expect a guy in his major league debut to have the perfect command, right? I think his command wasn't where we expected from him. This is a guy in Double-A who's throwing 70% strikes, and yesterday it was good, but it was more like 60%, right? 61 of 98 pitches for a strike. So it was good stuff. The changeup was as good as advertised. I think it's interesting with those models you see, because the stuff plus model really negates how good Thorpe's changeup is, especially because it has kind of the same. Basically, it has the same movement profile of a traditional kind of sinker style fastball, but it is so much slower. So it's got the shape and movement pattern that is not what anybody else is throwing these days. It's one of the most unique changeups you'll ever see. And that's why it's so effective, not because it has some crazy, stats on an underlying movement, but it's not the type of pitch you see from almost any other pitcher. So that pitch is going to be, it's an 80 grade pitch. I think it really is as close as you can get to an 80 grade changeup. And that's something that, we saw it on that strikeout against Julio yesterday. And then that strikeout, the looking strikeout against Canzone, that one was really nice, where he really just dropped it right into the bottom part of the zone. The changeup's great. Beyond that, right? Like you guys mentioned, the fastball is good. It's not a great fastball, but where he really makes his money is locating that fastball where he needs to. So it's kind of, using every corner of the zone with the fastball to then set up the pitches like the slider, the cutter, and the changeup especially, right? So the fastball was not great last night. He didn't locate it quite as well as he usually does. I think he missed a few spots. That double to Rayleigh, he missed the fastball kind of way too much of the plate at that point, right? And the one to the Garver that drove in that first run was really not a bad pitch. It was on the edge of the zone. It just kind of, he made a good swing. It was a good at bat, right? Now that happens when you face big league guys, and you've only, he's only faced Double-A hitters prior to this, right? The cutter and the slider is really what's going to be kind of that next step for him, right? You can see it come together, and like Jay mentioned earlier, the cutter looked good. It's a really nice pitch that he's kind of worked on the last year, but it still is a work in progress, right? So the cutter and the slider, both those kind of variations, they're the same pitch. He really just kind of speeds it up and slows it down. It's the same grip. I've heard him talk about it. Like those cutter and slider are not all that different, but it's 3 mile an hour difference, right? So he kind of manipulates it in his own way to change the way he uses it. So those two pitches, especially against right-handed hitters, are going to be the key in kind of taking him and really cementing himself as a legit major league starter, because he has the stuff. Overall, it's just, everything he does is efficient. It's smart. He attacked the zone yesterday. He didn't look like he was scared to throw strikes, which is something that I think a lot of guys, young pitchers, especially within the White Sox system, have kind of come up and have been hesitant to really pound the zone and attack. And Thorpe did just that. He attacked the zone. He wasn't getting hit hard. Like, it's not like guys were barreling up a bunch of balls against him. And I think you're going to start to see more and more of that. I think he's going to throw even more strikes his next time around, and you're going to see every other pitch start to play up up like the changeup did yesterday. All in all, I was really encouraged. I think you're going to see better fastball command from him as he gets more comfortable in the bigs, and you're going to see kind of more fastballs on the corners. And then beyond that, you're going to see some more putaways with the slider and the cutter and the curveball, right? Because he needs those pitches beyond just the changeup, right? Like against lefties, the changeup is the money pitch, right? I mean, he can throw that changeup 3 times in a bat against a lefty, and it'll probably work. Against right-handed hitters, you got to be able to mix in that slider and that cutter, especially. So I think is really good stuff. Thorpe should be in the rotation the rest of the year. There's really no reason for him not to be. He was making guys look silly all season in Double-A. I mean, he's some of the starts in Birmingham. I was just watching it and I was like, there's just zero reason this guy should be in Double-A still. And then, you know, with a team like the White Sox, right? Like who on the White Sox is giving quality innings every week aside from Fetty and Crochet? Like that's the reality of it right now. So this is a guy, 23. He's durable. He's been nothing but consistent for 2 years now in the minors. Keep him in the rotation. He should enter 2025 as the 2 or 3 starter on this team.
So he's throwing the changeup a lot. My question to you is, from what you saw from in Double-A, is he throwing it equally to lefties? I know you said lefties, they're going to struggle against that regardless, just the righty lefty. That's just natural. But, you know, some of the pitches he threw to the right-handed hitters last night was what almost caught me off guard for somebody that young to have that confidence. Obviously, it's his best pitch, so he's going to use it. But fastball changeup, is he throwing it equally to lefties and righties, number one, with the change? And then number two, between the cutter and the slider, to me, I thought, at least in the viewing that I had last night, I thought the cutter had more potential. It reminded me a little bit of not quite the same arsenal as a Lance Lynn, but, you know, not overpowering with the fastball. But if you can locate and you have similar velocity that's going in different directions, kind of mix it up a little bit, then you drop in that changeup, I can see some success there. But do you think he, at least in your experience, has thrown the changeup to righties just as much as he does to lefties, number one? And number two, between the cutter and slider, which do you think could potentially become his, you know, number 3 pitch?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the changeup usage is pretty similar, honestly. I think he probably throws it a little more against lefties from what I've noticed, but it's not a huge difference. I think he's still trusted against righties, and he still knows, you know, at the end of the day, like that's a pitch he's going to throw 30% of the time at least. Like it's his best offering, and he knows that, and that's something that he's able to utilize to his advantage. Where the changeup isn't just a strikeout pitch, right? Like yes, it gets whiffs, but he doesn't use it like that. He throws that changeup. You saw yesterday, first pitch changeup, drop it in there for a strike. You know, down in the count 2-1, drop in a low changeup, right, to mix it up, either force a ground ball or then get a called strike and then work your way from there, right? So it's a pitch he uses in all different ways, and that's part of why it's become such an effective offering for him, because he's confident. And then, like you said with the cutter and slider, I think the cutter did look really good yesterday. I think that's a good point you made there. But at the same time, I also think that the slider is going to be valuable because he's going to need that pitch to get a little bit more differentiation of the speed, especially because that cutter is kind of around the same range as his changeup at times. The changeup's right in between velocity-wise, the slider and the cutter. But in general, I think they're both going to be important. I don't think this is a guy, the way he pitches, that you're really going to have a defined third pitch. It might be the cutter. Maybe it takes another step forward. But this is a guy who's going to need 4 pitches, 5 pitches on any given day to really be his best self, because the way he pitches is so heavily based on his command and the way he kind of manipulates the zone, right? So I think it's going to come down to the way he uses them and the way he mixes and matches them. What I want to see is that cutter become even more of the early count pitch. What I would really like to see is him start to work that cutter kind of in place of the fastball almost sometimes, or if he can trust it enough to throw it in, you know, hitter friendly counts early in the zone, then he can get it over and then he can force, you know, move to his changeup from there. The curveball too, he didn't throw many curveballs yesterday, but he's got a good curveball. He's thrown it well in Birmingham. He threw it more in Birmingham than he did yesterday. I think he was just really feeling that changeup yesterday and the cutter as well. But I think the curveball we're going to end up, he threw 4 yesterday. So it was, I think, around 6% of curveballs yesterday, right? But I think we're going to end up seeing more like a 10% curveball out of him, because that curveball at times in Birmingham, especially against righties where he throws a little bit less reliant on the changeup, the curveball could then be really useful.
So the last thing on Thorpe, you know, in recent years, it's been the White Sox MO not to call guys up from Double-A and then let them stick in the major leagues. Obviously, you said you think he deserves a rotation spot the rest of this season. Realistically, looking at his numbers, there's nothing left to prove at the Double-A level. I mean, again, it's the White Sox MO to let them get to AAA and at least kind of, you know, test the waters there, face some more professional hitters who are going to work counts a little bit more and maybe not chase some of the stuff the younger guys will chase in Double-A. Do you think that there's a legitimate reason based on his stuff, based on his numbers, based on the White Sox MO, just big picture? Do you predict he'll stay in the major leagues, or do you think they'll send him back down eventually?
I really do think he'll stay, honestly. And I know that's not in line with a lot of the ways that the Sox have operated, Brett. And I think you see that with Ramos and with other guys that have come up in Estrani and Cannon have both been up and then back down, right? I think Thorpe's a different level. I mean, this is a guy who's a top 50 prospect in baseball. This isn't, I mean, I think you're going to see a similar pattern to Coulson Montgomery, I think. And I know Coulson's in AAA right now, right? But I think those are the types of players that once they come up, unless they really falter, you're going to want that guy sticking around. And I think he's done everything he needs to. You know, when you look at the White Sox general like farm system, right? Like Charlotte is a place where guys rake. Charlotte's known to be a hitter-friendly park. It's one of the most hitter-friendly parks in all of baseball. And that's kind of just how it goes. So in my opinion, you don't need pitchers. You don't need pitchers to spend much time in Charlotte. I think Birmingham's a tougher league in general. The Southern League is a harder place to. He did well there, and I think you don't want him getting beat up in Charlotte because of a park that balls get out in when you could just be in Chicago. And I think he's proven everything he needs to in the minor leagues. And honestly, like if there was better solutions with the White Sox roster, then maybe sure you might want him to have a little bit more time. But he's done everything he needs to do in minor league baseball. I think he's going to stick around. I think he's going to continue to pitch well and be a part of this rotation the rest of the year.
So I gotta ask, Elijah. I'm a Yohan Moncada stan, and I'm absolutely terrified of the third base situation going forward for this team. In your honest opinion, where do we go post Yohan Moncada? Where do we have an answer in-house? Is there a free agent on the market? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Brian Ramos's job to lose. Honestly, I think I know he struggled a little bit coming off the IL, and I don't think he's necessarily the guaranteed long-term answer there. But at the same time, Ramos has done enough in the last 2 years to deserve a shot to take that job. I think he's a really strong defender at third base. He's proven kind of. I know he hasn't been totally great when he was up in the big leagues. He made a few mistakes, but generally speaking, Ramos has grown a lot as a third baseman. He's become, an above-average defensive player there. In addition to being a guy that can have some pop, he could be a 15 to 20 homer guy if things go well for him. So I think, he's going to be the guy that will get a shot there. I don't know if he's the answer there, but then you look beyond Ramos, and if Ramos doesn't prove himself, later this season, next season to be a third base option, you've got both Jacob Gonzalez and Coulson Montgomery who are playing shortstop right now in Birmingham and Charlotte respectively, but one of those two is going to have to move off shortstop if both of them get to the major league level eventually. So I could see either Gonzalez or Coulson ending up being that third base option, more likely Gonzalez, because I think the team will want to stick with Montgomery at shortstop at least for a few years.
Oh, he did it. He's on mute. It's been a while. There you go.
You better stop gaining weight then. Play shortstop. Unless that listing is wrong, he's at 225, 6'4". That's a big boy.
He is.
I have him at third base in the future, so.
I think a lot of people do. A lot of people think Coulson might end up at third. But then you got Jacob Gonzalez, who looks good at third at shortstop. You've also got Brooks Baldwin right behind him, who also looks like a decent shortstop and middle infielder. So there's a lot of options in the infield, honestly.
Yeah, we'll get to Gonzalez as we go down to Birmingham, but let's start off with the peak of this Project Birmingham, and that is the rotation in these arms. So Elijah, I'm going to throw some names at you and give me the breakdown of them, and we'll stick to the arms first. Mason Adams, Kai Bush, Jake Eater, Jairo Yarte, Noah Schultz, and some maybe relievers in there, and Hoopy Tuaneda, who we got in the Grossman trade, and then Adler's in there too. But go ahead and as you talk, I'll put some of your stuff up from the arms wise.
Yeah, it sounds great. Well, we'll start with Jairo Uriarte because we just talked Thorpe, and Uriarte is a guy who, was the second part of that Dylan Cease trade. I think generally speaking, he's been pretty nationally underrated in my opinion. I know for Just Baseball, where I work at, we've got him as a top 60 prospect in baseball right now. He's most nationally, he's more that edge of the top 100. Uriarte's, he's got a ton of stuff. It's the upside. This is a guy you want to get in a trade when you're trading someone like Dylan Cease, because if things click for Uriarte, you're looking at an elite starting pitcher. You really are. And it's not saying it's going to be that, right? There's a wide range of outcomes, but this is a guy who has top 3 upside in the system in terms of pitching. The fastball is incredible. The movement profile on his fastball is way beyond his years. He's only 22. He's going to be 22 this whole season. He's kind of already looking like, he hasn't been perfect in Double A, right? But he already is a guy with Double A experience who's had a fair amount of success, has an excellent fastball paired with a great slider, right? That's already 2 pitches that are well above average and are going to play at the next level. He needs to still find that changeup. His changeup has shown flashes, but he doesn't have reliability on a third pitch just yet. But at the same time, Uriarte's fastball slider combo has the potential to be really, really good. The strikeout stuff is there. His command is improving. It's still that's the big question for him, is kind of how he's going to be able to command it. But Uriarte is a guy who, when you look at him and you look at upside, right? Like this is a guy who could be a very good starting pitcher if he can continue to hone in on the command and he can kind of find that changeup a little bit more than he has to this point. The numbers don't really do him justice. I think his expected stats in general are better than a lot of his, surface stats, right? He gave up 2 rough starts recently where he gave up 5 and 6 in each of those games. But at the same time, like after, dealing with a lot of walking problems early in the season, a lot of, just kind of not competitive at bats at times where he gets behind guys. He's been attacking the zone better lately. And I think this is someone who we've seen it in spurts, right? Like there was 2 games in May where he went back-to-back games with 11 Ks and 13 Ks. He's got the stuff, he's got the upside. And I think you're going to be patient with him because there's a lot of guys that are older than him right now in that rotation. But long-term, when you're looking at 2025 and beyond, Iriarte is a guy that could be a very, very good starting pitcher.
And that's, you talked about age. And
yeah.
By the way, I like you a lot now that you just gave Iriarte, because I said if his name was Smith, he would have gotten more respect. But there's a guy on the staff that his name's there. He looks like a tough guy. People love him. And that's what I'm getting to. Jake Eater. He was like 25, Eater, whatever. Yeah. He's 25.
Yeah, he is.
So how come he hasn't come up yet? Like, what is it Armin?
No, there's a lot of context behind that, to be honest with you. So, Eater's a guy that 2021, he was one of the best minor league pitchers in baseball. He was with the Marlins system. He had a 1.77 ERA that season, 15 games, goes down later in the year, gets Tommy John, right? So this is a college arm, right? He didn't come out of the draft till he was 21 already, or 22 even, I think. So this is a guy that, was drafted at 21, had a great first season at 22, undergoes Tommy John, so he doesn't come back till he's already 24 last year. So he was already kind of, the age thing is misleading to a degree because of the Tommy John that wiped out his entire second career professional season. He comes back last year in 2023, has a broken foot, misses part of the season, comes back, really couldn't find his ground, couldn't get his mechanics going. I talked to him in Birmingham last year and he was talking about how he was really honest and he was like, I really just don't feel fully comfortable with my body yet between the Tommy John and the broken foot and everything. He just wasn't right last year. And then you come into this year and I'm seeing a lot of things that I saw from Jake Eater looking back at film in 2021. He looks a lot more like what I was hoping he was looked for in this trade last year in the Burger trade, right? His stuff is really good and the command is getting better. Last year, it was like he couldn't command at all. This year, the walks are down, the strikeout rate is up. And in general, he's doing a better job working counts and attacking hitters than he was last year. On top of that, Eater's a guy that's been extremely unlucky. So I want to pull up his expected stats for a sec because this is someone who, a lot of his underlying numbers are some of the best in this rotation, even though his standard stats, right, are the worst in this rotation. He has the worst ERA in the rotation by a little bit, pretty wide margin at this point. But, for a guy with a 4.55 ERA, he has a 2.96 FIP, which is, fielding independent pitching. So that's kind of what removes all the external variables, looks at what he should be doing. Eater's been a lot better than the standard numbers show him to be. He's also gotten pretty unlucky with BABIP, 374 BABIP against him. That's just, that's completely unsustainable, right? So that's going to come down for sure. So in general, this is a guy that I think has actually gotten really unlucky. Yes, he's older, but those injuries over the past 2 years are why he's still in Birmingham. I think we'll see Eater in the near future. I know it's not quite yet, and I think it's hard to say he'll get a call up because other guys in this rotation are kind of overshadowing him right now. But at the same time, he looks healthy, and for the first time in 2.5 years, and he looks a lot more like the pitcher that I thought we were getting in that Jake Burger trade. So I think 2025 we're going to see Eater with the Sox at some point for sure.
So what about Kai Bush, lefty? I think he's the only lefty in the Birmingham rotation, right? I know he's a little bit older as well.
Bush is the only lefty in that rotation. Bush is an interesting case because Bush is someone who, has in general, he was another guy with an injury, right? He dealt with injuries. He came off of stuff last year. He didn't look great much of last year, but then has proceeded to turn it around this year. Same thing as Eater, right? I mean, Bush's numbers on the surface look great. I don't think Bush's stuff plays up quite the same as an Iriarte or an Eater, to be honest with you. But I do think Bush has looked a lot better this year. He's commanding a lot more than he used to last year. He's limiting hard contact. This is a guy at 24 that I definitely think the way he's pitching this year, we could see him later in the season, honestly, because he has been great all year. He really has turned a corner from last year. I mean, last year he really struggled last year, right? And that was another guy who came off injury at the beginning of last season. being hurt and then getting traded midseason. Like that, these are things that we don't take into consideration enough when we look at the surface level of his stats. Like these are young guys, and it's hard to go through the process of being traded midseason and having to adjust your entire life out of nowhere, right? And then Bush this year has been a totally different pitcher. A 1.98 ERA across 11 starts this year. His walk rate is down a lot, only 26 walks to 67 strikeouts. I mean, a 105 whip. This is a guy that looks really good. He's not overpowering hitters, so I think Bush you profile more as a back of the end rotation guy, potentially a reliever. I mean, I think you could put Bush in the Sox bullpen right now, and he'd probably be one of the better arms out there, to be honest.
I think the five of us would be better bullpen right now.
That's a good point. But I think. Yeah, he does have a mustache, another mustache guy. And he's a big dude, right? He's a big dude. He's got a lot of, presence on the mound. I think he's a solid arm. I don't think his upside is as high as some of these other guys in this rotation, but I do think he's another guy that's going to get a shot at the major league team in 2025. And we look at the pitching in this system, and like, we're going to see like the pitching staff in Chicago next year is going to be a lot of rookies, and I'm totally fine with that, to be honest. And then the last guy, Mason Adams is possibly the most impressive of all these guys, in that started the year in this rotation. We'll get to Schultz in a bit, because I know it's the big name for sure, but Adams is amazing. Adams came out of nowhere. Last year, I started kind of following him because he was piggybacking Noah Schultz in Kannapolis last year. Adams, a 13th round pick in 2022, minimal expectations, small college, small town guy from the middle of nowhere. He didn't go to a school that anybody knew about. He wasn't on draft radars. The Sox took a chance on him as a guy who was pitchability heavy, right? Command, control, pounds the zone, knows how to pitch. The stuff is not overwhelming. But Mason Adams, man, I mean, his numbers this year are ridiculous. I mean, he is the guy who doesn't walk people. He forces a ton of ground outs, and he just pounds the lower portion of the zone in a way that makes hitters uncomfortable. And it's hard to tell kind of how that'll play at the next levels, but you can't deny the results. I mean, we're 2 years into Mason Adams, and he's been dominant at every single level he's been to. I mean, in Kannapolis last year, he got all the way up to Birmingham at the end of last year, has been in Birmingham this whole year, and you see a guy with a whip under 1 this season. I mean, it's 20, what is it, 10 walks to 65 strikeouts this season.
Yeah, you had
Someone
point
compared him,
point
not-
point
not
eight
to
nine
Gonzo,
whip.
Yeah.
Not to get Gonzo excited, and I hate doing pitcher comparison. And the person that gave me this stat said, I know that you hate it. I hate it too. But he said in the minor league system, because of where he got drafted and like not on a board or anything, he's a guy that has basically pitched himself into everybody's radar. Yeah. And he's like, it's what Mark Burley did again. And it's like that question mark of how does it transfer to the next level? Because you're just like, how is he doing it? But his pitchability has been great. And when you look just stat wise, wherever he's pitched, and you know what, from these guys, except Gonzo's favorite pitcher, what I like about them, including him a lot, is the amount of innings pitched.
Yep.
They're consuming innings. Like the
entire rotation. Yep.
The entire rotation. Like they're up at like in the 60s already, which means 100%. That's good because you need to throw innings in that. But he's I'm not a big fan of his profile pick. Looks a little soft, but again,
what?
And he is from Okeechobee.
These are things that matter to Junior.
I'm just saying that we're judging these guys. I know I'm just, but he's a guy that when you look at him, and you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I love big prospects and I love guys that get drafted in the first round, obviously. But that round there, round 13, round 12, that's where the hunger is, man. That's when organizations get good. If you start finding guys in round 10 through 13 and developing guys like that, that means that the org is going in a better direction. Because it's easy getting the first rounder and that guy's great. If this kid makes it, if this guy makes it to the big leagues, and I'm not even talking about as a starter, I'm talking about he's just like a reliever.
Yep.
The Sox minor league system is going in the right direction, in my opinion, because the 13th round, you're just like, what do we want? What position do we want? Let's take somebody.
Yep. And we'll get to it later, but this is not the only guy in a mid to late round pick that is really doing well right now. I mean, there is at least 5 to 10 guys in the system right now taken after round 7, 8 that are legitimately on prospect radars right now because of what they've done coming out of college. And a lot of college guys that are just to a degree flyers that have just taken their game to a whole nother level and, look like really solid prospects. And Adams is a guy that I just, every time I watch him pitch, I just love it because it's efficient. He's attacking the zone. The Burley comp is, I don't think he's Mark Burley, but it's true. It's a guy.
His double-A numbers, I'm actually looking it up, fairly similar. Like the width, the walks. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
401. I don't think Mark Burley knew he was Mark Burley.
Yeah,
and
completely.
That's why scouting is great. But like you look at this guy and you say, pick 401. But his stats are speaking for himself. Like it's deserving of. And if you're going to get excited about anything in the White Sox system right now, meaning it's the depth. We're not talking about just 3 guys, which I think was a mistake. And that's when I shared the link in the group. When you look at the prospects, everyone was so focused on the top 4 guys. But then after those 4 guys, there was no one. Like after the top 4 guys in the 2000, 15, 16, 17, 18, like all those times, it was always the top guys, but there was no depth. Guys like this Mason Adam guys, there's more depth within the minor league system.
This system, I will say this, and you can put this on record for me, and I've said it online before in the past few weeks. Like, this is the deepest the White Sox system has been in my entire life. I'm not saying it's whatever, but like this system, I'm 22, so I'm pretty young. But it's this system, maybe the very early part of my life, but like since I've been following the White Sox, this system is deeper than it has ever been in my opinion. I'm not saying it's better, right? Because but it's the depth is insane.
90s.
Yeah,
depth. I'm not talking about a team being good.
Agreed.
I'm talking about depth, because even in the years they were winning, the White Sox were never the deepest minor league system ever.
Exactly.
I think I have to go back to the 90s.
And then, so like we talk about all this depth, but in terms of the high end, the high end is Noah Schultz. Noah Schultz is, to bring us home here with this rotation, right? Like, this is the best rotation in minor league baseball right now. Like, that's pretty given right now. That's what's crazy to see when you look at it. And then you add a guy like Noah Schultz, who to start the season, it's just nobody hits him. Like, he doesn't get hit. And he did it in Winston this year, and it was like, okay, let's see him try to build up in Birmingham. Let's give him a shot at the next level, right? But when you look at him pitch, it doesn't matter who he's facing in the minor leagues right now. This guy is just better than almost every hitter in minor league baseball. And there's a reason he's a top 30 in Major League Baseball right now in the prospect rankings. And this is going to be, once Paul Skeens graduates, like, there is a legit chance Noah Schultz is one of the 2-3 best pitching prospects in all of baseball at the end of the season. Maybe the best next year. Honestly, there's a chance. Like, it's all going to come down to the innings for him. He's only throwing 4 innings right now because of the arm injuries last year. He only threw 27 innings last year. So it's all about being patient with him. But in terms of stuff, Noah Schultz is the closest thing the White Sox have since Chris Sale to an ace lefty. I mean, maybe Garrett Crochet, but I'd venture to say Schultz's upside is higher than Garrett Crochet right now. So, I mean, this is a guy who I think can be like the ace of these guys. Like, all of these guys we talk about are really good, and there's a lot of good pitchers, but the one guy that can be the true ace of this potential future staff is Noah Schultz. I mean, he is unbelievable. The arm slot and the angle he gets from a guy who's, almost 7 feet tall, the way he throws and the way he's coming at you with the extension he gets is ridiculous. And then you factor in that the fastball's coming in at 98, 99 with movement on it, with natural sink to the way he throws it. Then you pair it with probably the best slider in all of minor league baseball, other than maybe Jackson Jobe with the Tigers. I don't think it's crazy to say it's the best slider in minor league baseball. It really is an incredibly special pitch for him. The only thing in his kind of his progression, right? And he's mixing in this cutter now too. That's been great, kind of a variation of the slider. The next thing for him is getting the innings up, right? We got to see more than 4 innings to start. That's going to be the big thing. And we got to see the changeup come along a little bit. He's had times where the changeup has looked good, but it's not quite there. But in terms of just pure stuff and upside, there's not many prospects in baseball that I'm taking over Noah Schultz. And this is a guy who, he's still young. You got to remember, this guy's still really young. So it's going to be a slow process because the White Sox don't want to rush him. But if you told me he was in the majors next year at some point because of how good he is, I wouldn't be surprised.
How many fastballs does he have?
He does mix the 4-seam and the 2-seam, but he really just his natural.
You don't need a changeup.
I mean, yes, I think his natural fastball just runs already. So he kind of just ends up having one, but he does. I think to be a starter, he'll need at least a usable changeup, but the way he's throwing, a 2-seam with a slider and a cutter variation, like, he'll be fine either way. I think it really just is about the innings and the arm buildup. But ultimately, this strikeout rate, right? Like, he's only thrown 39 innings and he has 56 strikeouts this year. And then you look at the fact that he has 7 walks. Are we serious? I mean, it's the stuff is good. We always knew the stuff was good with Noah Schultz. But last year, even in his limited innings, you wanted to see a little bit more consistent command. Now it's like, the guy, I mean, last year he was great too, honestly, in terms of command, but this year it's like you really see he is attacking the zone. He knows his stuff is good, and he will continue to dominate in the minor leagues every single time he goes out there, pretty much. And it's really just going to come down to building his innings up and building that arm up. If he can get to 100 innings this year, which would be a dream come true, even 90 to 100 innings this season, right? He's at 39 right now. If he can get to 90, 100 innings this year, this is a guy that will be up sometime next year because he's just that good.
If he gets 75 innings, he'll be up. His slider is impressive because he throws it for a strike.
Yep.
Minor league catchers and minor league umpires obviously gets better in the big league, supposedly, it's supposed to get better. But his slider, and when you said that, that's why I say he doesn't need to change it, because his slider is ranked up there.
It's the best slider. Yeah.
When you look at, again, analytics, when you look at his slider compared to big league guys, he's up there. His slider is better than 75%. And you got to give credit for that. But I might. So here's this. So would you guys, this is for Gonzo.
Oh boy.
This is for everybody. Would you guys rather have all the guys hit that we just talked about and Noah Schultz be a complete flop? Would you sacrifice that?
What do you mean by, so you're talking about the rest of the guys in the double A rotation?
Just like normal guys that get to the big leagues, they pitch. They're just a team. They're good. They're there. They're everyday big leaguers. They're throwing. But Noah Schultz is like,
his ERA is a 5.
He's Lance Broadway. Like, I'm just throwing out a name. Lance look probably like.
Why would you jinx him like that, man? Why would you even?
I'm just throwing
those two names in the same sentence.
I'm just saying in general, like he just becomes like a guy that has to take a tour through Asia, and then maybe comes back. But I'm saying because he's up like Elijah.
Noah Fetty.
No, I'm just saying though that Elijah just said he might be the number at one point next year. He might become the number 1 prospect or 1 or 2 as a pitcher. I don't think the White Sox have ever had it like a true number 1 prospect since when? I don't think Sale was a number 1, was he?
I don't think he was ever
up there, but he wasn't. He wasn't quite that high.
He was there for like 2 weeks. But I'm saying like a true number 1 pitching prospect. I don't think the White Sox have ever had that in a long time. Like maybe Jack McDowell when he came out of college. I just don't know. I would have to look up year by year. So he would be the biggest pitching prospect they've had ever on the rankings.
I mean, Kopech was really high, to be honest. When Kopech was first coming,
that's
Kopech
my
was
worry.
top 15 in baseball.
That's my worry.
But yeah, no, 100%.
If it wasn't for the pandemic, I feel like Crochet would have been up there.
He would have too. Yeah.
But they
I just don't. He wasn't. He was in the big leagues too fast to like.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way,
yeah, you have to build minor league
into the show.
Yeah. Schultz is special. That's what I'll say. I wouldn't want to sacrifice the rest of these guys because, like we said, the depth is good and the depth is important. I think building sustainable success is going to come from all this depth right now. And if a lot of these guys can be at least big league pieces, that's going to be what really leads to this next generation being more successful than this past one. But at the same time, you're right. Schultz is the guy in this system that you look at as a potential ace. So it's hard to pass that up.
So quick question. What year? Because this is all beautiful and talking like, oh, this guy, that guy. I'm a year person. So when do you think majority of these guys will, because we already saw Thorpe, so when I hate the word window, but I mean the guys are coming up now. So at what point do you think majority of them will be in the big league team together?
2025, man. I mean, honestly, I don't think that's. I think this team is really bad right now.
No, I hope so. I'd rather lose 100 games than lose 100
in terms
games.
of. At least in terms of right, exactly. At least in terms of these Birmingham guys, like most of these arms are pretty close to being ready. And I think next year you're going to look at a team that is still not going to be good, but you're going to have a team that's primarily young guys, and that's a team that I have more interest in watching than what I'm watching right now. Because if you're like you said, if you're gonna struggle, let these guys work it out at the big league level. Let them work through stuff and let them figure it out to the point where this team can be successful and grow together, because then come 2026, there's even more guys coming up, right? So I think you're going to see it in waves, but in general, like most of the guys we just mentioned, of these 6 pitchers in Birmingham, I think all of them will debut in 2025, if not this year. So, I mean, I don't know if all of them will be major rotation pieces, right? Like, I think Bush is a guy I could see moving to the pen. I don't think he has quite the upside of some of these other arms. I think Eder could also move to the pen, right? Like, you only have 5 rotation spots. So not all these guys are going to be big league starters, but they're all going to get a chance to be. And some of them are going to do it for sure. And I think a good amount of them will do it, honestly.
I like the fact that you just mentioned that they're all going to be up, because if these guys end up being average, like they all become big league pitchers at some level, either the starting or the relieving, with as many as them are, I think that's the quickest way that you get to back to 500 without even adding any hitting. Meaning, like, we have a stable pitching staff, and with bullpen guys, meaning your bullpen gets better when you have too much starting pitching, and then guys that get pushed to the bullpen just because of space.
Yes,
so, but your bullpen gets better because of that. You can't just go and be like, oh, we didn't have any starters and we're going to look for bullpen guys. That's usually how it doesn't work. Everybody starts off as a starter. So I think the pitching is the key for them to get back to 500 as quickly as possible.
100%.
So before we get to the bats, what catches your eye with Hoopy and Adler?
Yeah, both those guys are good pen arms. I think both those guys should honestly be in the pen after the deadline this year. I don't really see a reason to keep wasting time with those two. AHT, I think people call him Hoopy, AHT, either way. But he is a guy that I think is just like, I didn't really know much about him in all honesty before the Grossman trade, right? And when the Sox traded for him, I was like, oh, let's check it out. And 0.46 ERA, 0.76 whip, 27 strikeouts across 19 and 2/3 innings. I mean, this is a guy that he pounds the zone. He knows how to attack hitters. He doesn't get hit hard at all. Only 10 hits allowed in 17 appearances out of the bullpen this year. So he's a guy that I think is pretty close to being ready at this point. And then Adler is someone who, as a pretty high draft pick, right? Adler was a guy who was drafted in the 6th round as a reliever. You really don't see guys that are already relievers get drafted that high often. And he came in, and I just did an interview with Adler about a month ago, and he was telling me, like, most guys don't like being relievers, and I love it. And I loved hearing that from him, because he basically just was like, I embrace that role. I love knowing that I'm coming in and getting the job done for an inning, and that's my job, right? And I know that's what I have to do. And he does that, and he embraces that role, right? He comes in every game and he attacks the zone. He's got a great pair of breaking balls. The fastball is pretty solid for him. He uses it well in the top of the zone. So I really like both these guys. I think both of them, maybe they get a short stint in Charlotte, but I think those two pen arms. There's a few others in Birmingham that are good as well. That bullpen has also been really good. And, it's easy to be good as a bullpen when your starter's giving you 6 solid innings every game, pretty much. That definitely helps the bullpen guys there. But I think Adler and Hoopy are guys that I expect to be up with the Sox late this season, if not pretty much to start next year.
Round 30.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, why the hell, and this is where I'm going to get on Chris Getz, even though he's my boy. Why the hell is Hoopy in AA, my boy? Why is Hoopy in AA?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
I'm just saying, I'm looking at it. I don't know much about him, but I'm looking at him the season before, 9 innings. And when you're having, you're a bullpen guy, you're not developing anymore. Like, you're either going to get outs or not. So this is a piece here that you're like, okay. And this is the important part. Like, these are important pieces. Like this, if this guy works out, you saved yourself like $20 million.
Yeah, you're right. It's a late draft pick. You picked him up. I mean, and again, you got him for Robbie Grossman. This is the thing that I have to give Chris Getz some credit, because a lot of the guys on this current roster right now for the Sox are going to net prospects, and they're going to net at the very least a bullpen piece, right? Like, Tommy Pham's going to get something. Eric Fetty's going to get more than something. Kopech's going to get. There's even Steven Wilson will get something potentially. Like, Paul DeYoung's going to get something at the deadline. Like, they're turning in veterans into something, right? Like,
they got this guy Hoopy for Grossman. I'll take that trade. I'll take 100% these numbers. And again, I've never seen, these are pretty impressive numbers, but I like if you can imitate, and again, I think that minor league baseball is the same. If you can do the same thing as guys progress, do the same thing in the big leagues. So 5 innings, 6 innings, and then have your bullpen just create consistency. And I think that's the goal of them all coming up together at once. But I would like to see this guy skip AAA.
I think he'll be in Chicago after the deadline, when you see some of the bullpen pieces get either DFA'd or traded.
Don't go to Charlotte. Charlotte is going to go there and see ball.
I completely agree. Yep. I'm all for skipping pretty much almost any of these guys over Charlotte, to be honest with you. I really am. I'm in the belief that if you're succeeding in AA, and especially in the Southern League, that you'll be able to succeed at the big league level to an extent. I think a lot of these pitchers can minimally go to Charlotte or just skip it entirely.
He agrees.
The dogs agree with you. But let's transition to the bats here at Birmingham. So you tweeted recently, Elijah, within the stats here from 2 months of baseball. WRC plus with Brooks Baldwin was at 183, Tim Elko at 138, and Jacob Gonzalez at 137. Go ahead and talk to us a little bit about just these three, and we'll get to the rest. Yeah,
we'll get to some of the other guys that have improved their stats since then. But we'll start with Baldwin. Talk about late round picks, Junior. 12th rounder, the round before Mason Adams. The 2022 draft, by the way, is looking like it could be a special draft class. This is a guy that was picked, 12th round, right before Mason Adams in the 2022 draft class. Brooks Baldwin. Last year, I noticed, I was like, here's a guy in Canny and then in Winston, right? He went to Winston, got even better towards the second half of the season, played all over the field last year. He was playing left, he was playing right, he was playing second, third, and short, kind of moving all over the place. Contact, speed, that's his game. He's not going to have a bunch of power. This is not a guy who's going to hit a bunch of homers, right? But he's got some, he hit 15 homers last year, actually. I shouldn't even doubt him in that way, right? But generally speaking, he's a contact hitter, line drive guy, a lot of doubles, just a lot of hard hit singles. really versatile, and that's something that I think is going to take him to the next level. And then this year, somewhat of an aggressive promotion to Birmingham. I think when they decided Coulson was going to go to Charlotte, they just said, screw it. This guy's only got 26 games in Kannapolis or in Winston, but we're just going to send him straight to Birmingham because there's a shortstop opening right there. Baldwin this year gets to start the season as a shortstop after being kind of the utility guy last year at the lower levels, and has been like the best hitter in the entire Southern League all season. And he slowed down a little bit he had an OPS over 1,000 to start the season in April, but he, generally speaking, just hits the ball. He's hitting 352, and it hasn't gone down much. He's been over 350 the entire season in terms of batting average. And I'm not a big batting average guy. I think it's kind of a faulty stat these days, but at the same time, 352 is undeniable, right? He gets on base all the time. 424 on base percentage, OPS around 900, 15 stolen bases already. He's got some homers. He's walked a good amount, 25 walks this season. He's just a really good baseball player. This guy is not the guy you're going to dream on being an all-star. But I got this comp from the broadcaster and Canny, Dan Haloti. Shout out to Dan, who's a great guy who's been watching, the Cannonballers all season. Saw him last year. He said, this guy's Ben Zobrist. This is your Ben Zobrist mold, right? This is a guy who will play on the entire field. He will hit for contact. He will run. He will hit a few homers here and there that come up big. But generally, Brooks Baldwin is a phenomenal utility piece to have. He showed that he could be a starting infielder, this season. He's taken his game to a whole nother level this year. And now with Jacob Gonzalez there, he started to play more second. He started to play more third. But having a guy that can get on base and run like Brooks Baldwin can, who will literally play anywhere in the field other than catcher maybe, is really valuable to have. And another guy who, out of nowhere, late round pick, nobody expected anything from a guy out of a UNC Wilmington, as a 12th rounder, right? But Baldwin switch hitting too. I should mention that as well. Another good asset to have, right?
I was just about to ask.
Yeah, he's awesome.
How are his splits? Does it favor one way or the other, left side, right side? Do you think he's more natural on one side?
He's definitely better as a lefty, so against righties, which is good because that's the strong side of a platoon, right? He's 924 OPS against right-handed pitching, 776 against left-handed pitching, so still not bad either way. He's still got a batting average over 340 against both, but you definitely see more of the power when he's hitting lefty. As a lefty, he has all of his home runs this year as a left-handed hitter. He's generally just got a little bit more oomph from that side of the plate, but in general, it doesn't, 776 OPS against lefties from the right side isn't bad either. So I think he'll stick as a switch hitter. Maybe by the time he's in the bigs, he might become more of a primary lefty. I could see him becoming that, but I think the versatility of switch hitting is great. And I think Baldwin's someone that is, a high floor, right? Like this is a guy that I think has come out of nowhere for most people in the last year or two. I was following him a little last year, but he looks like a big league piece. And I think someone who is going to be in Charlotte by later this season, honestly.
People don't usually look at this. He was drafted by the San Francisco Giants, who usually drafts us really well out of high school in the 15th round. Okay. And he gets picked up again out of college at a place where they play really good college baseball.
Yep.
I know that he's not sexy like Coulson Montgomery.
Right.
Hits the ball long. But he might be the best shortstop defensively if he comes up that the White Sox have had in a long time.
It's the versatility, right? It's the fact that he can play all over the infield, outfield. Yeah.
They're using him and this is where it's dangerous. The people in the minor league developing him because his numbers defensively are one of being a shortstop. He looks pretty, but I've never seen him playing shortstop. Now I really want to see him playing to see if he can.
He looks good at short. He's been good there.
If he can pick the ball and catch it and get on base, because one number that I love in today's baseball standards is that he's only struck out 38 times.
Yeah.
Which means he puts a ball in play and doesn't strike out a lot. So if he becomes a guy that can catch the ball at shortstop with a good offense around him, I feel like that's a key position of, can the guy catch the ball? Again, a guy that from this, I did not know much about, but I'm kind of excited. He looks a little surfy like. Wish that his name was Pedro Gonzalez or something like that, because his hands again, I would be more sure. But
Junior just cares what these guys look like. The makeup. Junior's the guy who has the old scouting report, like doesn't look like a big leaguer. When curly hair, no good.
They're looking at Coulson. Okay, I'm looking at Coulson's weight and his size. He hasn't even had difference yet. I'm like, dude, you could do like Slacko playing shortstop, and you're gonna want him to go deep, So if you want him to go deep, you want him to get bigger. It's like playing Joe Creedy at short. Can he take ground balls at short? Yes, but would it look good? But this guy fits your typical shortstop profile, which then is like, wow, it's another guy that you can take there and have depth at the position where he can compete. And if he doesn't work out, oh wow, he can play other positions and then become a utility guy.
And it's
What's
a good
his
problem.
natural position?
His natural position is shortstop. He came up as a shortstop. He was drafted as such. I think he would also be an excellent second baseman, right? So if you end up with Coulson at short still, and then you have either Ramos or Gonzalez at third, or if Gonzalez ends up at short and Coulson ends up at third, Brooks would immediately become a really good second baseman. He looks
Brian Ramos has some competition, man.
There is a lot of competition. It's true. Ramos is as kind of the guy that's ahead of the pack in this group of infielders. Like Ramos is going to have to show himself at third base next year, even maybe later this year, to really earn a job there, because there's a lot of guys coming. And then Jacob Gonzalez, the next guy, right? Like this is a guy who, when the Sox drafted him last year, I was not a fan of the pick. I will be honest. I didn't like the pick. I thought
there's no hype around him at all.
There should be. So I thought it was kind of a safe pick. I didn't love the way his swing looked. My whole thing was in college that I thought he kind of got away with a little bit of a choppy, kind of not very smooth swing in college, because he's really advanced and he was an older guy and he had a lot of experience and he kind of was just too good for the collegiate level, so he could get away with kind of a crappy swing. Jacob Gonzalez completely overhauled his swing this season. He changed the way his legs move. He changed the way his hands come through the zone, and it has made a world of difference. You can see, I mean, last year he really struggled and everybody was like, oh, Jacob Gonzalez, this is a first rounder who looks terrible in his first professional season. Whatever. That was 2 months last year. He comes up this year to Winston, totally different hitter. The plate approach is back to where kind of his bread and butter in college was his plate approach. He was always a guy that walked a lot. He took advantage of bad pitches. This year, the plate approach is back. He's not striking out. He's walking a lot. In Winston, he walked more than he struck out. He was starting to tap into some of that power. You saw more extra base hits come through. The swing looks better. He looks more comfortable at the plate. The numbers have still maintained in Birmingham. He got off to a really hot start in Birmingham, has slowed down a little bit the last week or two, but in general, looks like he's already ready for the AA level. Now you're seeing a guy that was, a first round pick. Last year was not indicative of who he is. He made the adjustments, whatever happened, whoever told him kind of some of the things to change in the White Sox organization this offseason nailed it, because he looks like everything that we hoped he could be, but now he's putting it together and now he looks more comfortable at the plate. Gonzalez also looks solid at shortstop. He doesn't look great at shortstop, but he looks solid to me. I think, second, third might be more likely for him long-term. I think he'd be an amazing second basemän. I think he could maybe be a third baseman. I think the arm strength might be a little bit low for third base, but in general, Gonzalez is someone who, is in his first full season now, is already in AA. He's going to spend probably the rest of the year in Birmingham, but this is a guy who next year will be knocking on the door as well, right there with Brooks Baldwin.
So a year ago, Gonzo and others, we're talking about Popeye and Lenin Sosa and the middle infield of the future, blah, blah, blah. Baldwin and Gonzalez compared to Popeye and Lenin Sosa, how do you stack them?
Yeah, they're better. Yeah, for sure. I think there were some good things about Lenin. I was a fan of Lenin for sure. And he last year and the year before, I always have been a big fan of Lenin actually. But I think in general, the combination of when you look at Montgomery and then Baldwin and Gonzalez, I like their stuff better because I like their approaches better. Popeye and Lenin have both always been guys who don't have the plate approach to stick. And that's the biggest reason I don't think either of them have really succeeded at the big league level, is because they swing a lot, they strike out a lot, and they don't walk a lot. All three of these guys, now that you look for the middle infield in Coulson and Gonzalez and Baldwin, have better approaches, are a little bit more consistent with their contact skills, and just present kind of a more well-rounded game. And I think that's something that the White Sox, especially in the last 2 years, have started to target more, is guys that are a little bit well-rounded as players. I think you see a lot of this past.
Better than Madrigal? Yeah. So not in college though, and that's the part of worry. So. Right. I knew Popeye was going to be garbage from forever. The only one that liked him was John. I think Lenin Sosa was developed wrong. He should have been given the spot to hold the play second and play every day and be quiet.
I agree. Totally agree.
And that's what I'm talking about here about Jacob Gonzalez. I hate the fact that he was a first rounder. The pressure that he has on himself.
Of course.
He's Andrew Vaughn. He's got a great eye, great approach. He had a little.
Andrew Vaughn was a third overall pick. There's a big difference.
That's what I'm saying, though. But I'm saying the guy that I know, but Jacob Gonzalez has been a guy that has hit his whole life. I looked at his body right now. I've seen the video. He ain't a shortstop. Not a shortstop. They can put him there. Not a natural shortstop. Second base because of the arm problem. But the problem is mentally wise, he's always produced like he was a top hitter. So he thinks in his head that he's going to have to come to the big leagues and hit 30 home runs and produce at that level. So when we're talking about developing players in the minor leagues, it's like, are we developing them? Like they're developing Jacob like he's Coulson Montgomery. And that's not always.
I don't know if I agree with that, though. I'm not sure if I agree with that.
I hope not. I hope not. I hope they're just like letting him go there and play where I think the other kid before the Brooks kid, who's a natural shortstop, is pretty much got less pressure of like, hey, just go play your game. So I mean, from a development standpoint, the pressure that some of these guys get because of the round that they're picked in, and how like they're perceived of like, you're gonna be this guy in the future.
Sure.
Like Brian Ramos, for example. Like I'm looking at these guys right now, and when I saw from Brian Ramos coming up, Brian Ramos has nothing secured. Brian Ramos might be DFA'd in 5 years if he doesn't get it together with these guys here. Because he's not Pantera. You know, he's not one of those guys that you look and say, wow, look at a generational talent. And these guys on paper, I'm like, wow, okay, spring training is going to be really interesting when you're looking at those. But that's what I mean. I like the depth because, again, Coulson's in a different level, and there should have, Coulson and the North Schultz. But these guys, they should be, let them develop.
It's interesting. What I want to point out with that, like you said, even with Gonzalez being a first rounder and him looking good this year and him having all these kind of expectations on him, he's still splitting shortstop duties with Brooks Baldwin. So you've got two guys that even with that expectation, since he's coming to Birmingham, he's got 12 games at short and he's got 9 games at second base. So Gonzalez and Brooks are still splitting time at shortstop because I think ultimately the team knows that neither of them are going to be the shortstop come next year, right? Regardless of what you want to say about Coulson, the White Sox are going to give Coulson every chance in the world to earn the shortstop job because of the optics, because of how good he is, because of his prospect pedigree. They're going to give him the chance to be the shortstop. So both these guys need to learn how to play second and need to learn how to play third because that's the reality when you look into the next few years of White Sox baseball, right? So I think both of them are really talented. I'm excited about the infield. I think there's a lot of excitement there at both those spots.
I can tell you what Frank's going to say. He played in the SEC.
Yeah.
First round pick. First round pick.
SEC.
We got the infield talked about. Let's go to the catching spot in the outfield with Cuero as a catcher, and then your outfielders, Veras and Tatum. Go ahead, Elijah.
Yeah, Caro is a guy for me. I love Caro. I got to know him the last few years. I've talked to him a handful of times. The dude's just a hard worker. I think that's something that like I know that's kind of stupid to say, and I think all these guys are hard workers, obviously. But like Caro is like very clearly wants to be the catcher for this team. You can tell like he's confident at the plate. He's got the power. He's got the juice. You know he's got a pretty good plate approach as well. He was always super young for his age. I mean, he got bumped up to Double-A by the Angels last year at skipped over High A completely, got bumped up to Double-A at a really young age, was slightly overmatched at times, but still really held his own. And now you look at this year and you see a guy that looks more confident. He looks more comfortable. The power in the last two, I don't know if you saw this, but minor league hitter of the week last week, just was absolutely mashing the first 2 weeks of June so far. The homers, 10 homers this season, right? Like the power he's tapping into. He's got a good plate approach already, 22 walks this season, only 41 strikeouts. The arm is great behind the plate, and he is constantly working to become a better defensive catcher. I can tell you from watching him in Birmingham last year that he is working all the time. Before the games, it's an hour of nothing but picking drills and framing drills and blocking drills every single day in Birmingham. The guy wants to be a catcher, and he wants to be the catcher of this team, and it's getting there. He's getting better and better defensively. He's only 21 still. Like he just turned 21 2 months ago, right? And he's already one of the better catchers of the Double-A level. Pitchers love working with him. I've heard all these guys in Birmingham really enjoy working with him. They feel comfortable with him. They feel like he has a game plan. He knows what he's doing behind the plate. He's able to kind of work with them about what's working best for them on a given day, to kind of notice and pick up on things that they're doing best. He's just a really good, exciting catcher. I think he might not be a guy that's incredible at the plate or defensively, right? But he's going to be good at both, I think. I think he's going to be a high floor hitter who will take some walks, who will tap into some power. And then again, beyond that, someone who, he might strike out a little bit. I think his strikeouts will probably go up a little bit as he goes to the age because he does take some big hacks at times. But honestly, this is the catcher of the future. I know people really like Corey Lee, and I like Corey Lee too. But I'm looking at it's never hurts to have two catchers. And I think the two of them between Corey Lee and Caro is going into 2025. Like that's the catching duo for hopefully
you have
a
him
long
in
time.
2025 up in the big leagues. You have him in
not to start the season, but I think some point in 2025 he'll be up. Yeah, I do.
So
I don't think to start the year, but I think
you have him being in the top 4. You said future wise.
No, not that.
Okay.
No, not he's not a top. I think this is a guy that, when you look around baseball, right? Like there's a new wave of catching. Catching is not the position it used to be where you've got guys that don't hit at all and are just defensive studs. Like guys need, like catchers these days need to do both.
Maldonado.
And right, whatever. Who cares about the current White Sox? But catchers are hitting these days, and Carroll's going to hit. This guy's got pop. He's got a good approach at the plate. He's going to hit, and he's getting better behind the dish. And his arm is great. That's another thing with Carroll. I mean, Lee and Carroll could be the best arms behind the plate of any catching duo in baseball come a few years from now. I think it's going to take some time. I don't want to rush him. Right, this is his second full season in AA, but I still don't think you want to push him. You don't need to. He's really young, and he's going to be a stud. I think you get him up to Charlotte later this season, and I think next year you start him in Charlotte, and you look at a guy who could be, he kind of just, I think he'll almost just go with these pitchers. And I think that's the aim. The reason I think him and a lot of these guys are still in Birmingham right now is the aspect of getting these pitchers comfortable with him, because he's going to be their catcher. So I think you're going to see Carroll almost move with some of these rotation guys in Birmingham to Charlotte later this year and into next year, to then mid next season, all those guys being with the White Sox eventually.
What's his ceiling? What's Carroll's ceiling? I
think Carroll's ceiling is a top 10 catcher in baseball. Yeah, I don't think it's a top 5 catcher, top 3 catcher, but I think if things click for him, he's a switch hitter. He can hit 15 homers a year. He can get on base at a pretty good clip. And I think you're looking at a guy who could be a 8th to 10th best catcher in baseball if everything clicks for him.
Remember, what was the guy's name in the Phillies? They call him Chucho Ruiz, the Panamanian. Jay knows.
Carlos Ruiz.
Carlos Ruiz. That's what I've seen the comparison on him.
I don't mind that. I think he's a little bit better of a hitter than Ruiz.
That would be solid.
Show, I said, great.
So Edgar, he's doing it for all of Cuba, because the White Sox have had so many flops with the Cubans. Yeah. So the fact that he's representing that. But here's the catch. This is why you leave Pedro Grifol as the manager. Cuban catcher. He is the greatest catching instructor of all times in the big leagues.
I don't know what I just heard.
The job that he's held the longest in Major League Baseball has been catching instructor. And when they went to the World Series, that's like his claim to fame. This guy's Cuban. He's all the Cubans' guy's dad. Remember when he was going to be Moncada's dad when he came to the Sox? This is the reason they keep him for next year, so he can mentor Edgar. I like him because I think that he's been playing pro baseball for a long time, and I was worried when they signed him and they showed his body, and I said, "Oh, this kid's going to get fat and he's going to get thick." So the fact that you're saying that he works really hard, I think he's self-conscious about he needs to take care of his body to stay at that level. And this year he came even in better shape. So every year he's gotten in better shape. And when you look at him now, he actually looks younger now, and his body looks better than when they signed him.
You're right.
He looks like Salvador Perez now when they signed him. I was like, how old is this guy?
Yeah.
But his body's gotten way better. And I always love switch hitting catchers, even if like they're not they don't hit on both ends, just because it gives you flexibility. But I would love that. I love that Corey Lee platoon and see what they got. That would be great. That would be good.
Outfielders, we'll go briefly. Not a ton on there, but Wilfred Veras. That was what I said the other day. Wilfred Veras has some of the most raw power you will ever see in terms of minor leaguers, right? 469 at 111 miles per hour. That's not normal. Veras is a free swinger. He strikes out way too much still. But when you see him hit the ball, you see it and you're like, whoa, that ball is coming off the bat at ridiculous speeds. The guy, I mean, he's continued to rake, right? Like last year, 20 homers in 2022, 17 homers last year, already has 8 homers this year, 12 doubles, really just drives the heck out of the ball all the time. The swing is a little bit over swinging at times. He does a little too much sometimes. 66 strikeouts, only 8 walks is definitely a problem. He's going to have to refine that approach. But in terms of raw power, Wilfred Veras is just super fun to watch. And this is 2 years now of him between the second half of last year and now all of this year. It's a 90 game sample in Birmingham of him just hitting really well and having an OPS of in the high 7s, right? Like he's been a pretty consistent masher. He's got a slugging percentage this year of 460. He had 466 last year. So he's continued to rake at every level he's been at. It's just going to come down to the approach. If he can refine his approach, reduce the chase, reduce the whiff sometimes, he's going to hit the ball hard. And then a guy like Terrell Tatum, who was one of the last guys, I do like Terrell Tatum. I'm not sure Terrell Tatum is a big league piece long-term. I think at best case scenario, he's kind of your 4th outfielder profile. Tatum has a really good approach, walks a ton, good speed, good defense, but he's small, doesn't have a ton of impact at the plate. The contact skills are solid, but not great. Tatum's a guy who, if everything clicks for him, you're looking at a really good 4th outfielder because he has a ton of speed. He has a really good defense in center field, but I'm not sure you're ever going to see quite enough impact with the bat for Tatum.
So
I got a lot of Micro Adolfo when you start talking about Veras there.
Yeah.
Are they similar players though?
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. Yeah. And that doesn't mean, and it could work out better, right? Give him a chance. See what happens.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. That's true.
They never brought him up. We never know if he was going to be good or not. They never brought him up. By the way, my guy on that team, on that outfield, I know he's hitting like dog crap, but he went to Miami. Jacob Burke.
Jacob Burke's he's cool too. He had a great season last year. He's another guy.
Look at his profile picture for the last 3 years.
Yeah. He's another guy that similar to Tatum, really good defense, really good speed. It'll all be about if the back can come together. I'm not sure it will, but again, great speed, great defense for
Says dirty all over it. Grinder. You get that guy into the right development, he looks like he's had fun. No, but I'm saying like you don't even see his name mentioned, but like again, another guy in the 11th round pick, 341.
Got a 511 OPS in AA. That's tough.
That's what I'm saying though. But I guess
second professional season still. Yeah.
So
that's
let's go.
Duke Ellis came from this team, right? He wasn't in Charlotte. He was in AA.
He was in BM. Yeah.
Let's go to Charlotte really quick and go through the Charlotte Knights real quick. Elijah, I'm gonna spit some names at you. Let me know if anything stick out at you. Sean Burke, Coffey, Cousin, Ellard. We'll wrap up with Montgomery, but out of those arms, is there anything that sticks out from those guys?
I actually like Sean Burke. I was a fan of him in 2022. I thought he looked really impressive. He was going to be a rotation piece probably last year before the injury. Goes down with a shoulder injury, is just making his way back. The stuff is there. The strikeout stuff is there. I honestly think Sean Burke could be a very good reliever. I'm not sure he's a starting pitcher. The command has never really come together for him quite yet. But this year he looks healthy finally. The past few starts I've watched him in Charlotte. Today was not as rough. He pitched earlier today. It was a little bit worse for him today, but his first start in Charlotte was great. The strikeout stuff is there. His curveball is excellent. I think he's a reliever. I think it's fun to have him as a starter, but I think if you transition Burke to a reliever, I think he's a very good reliever. I think you could plug Burke into that bullpen right now. The rest of those guys you mentioned, Coulson, Coffey, Ellard, it's more bullpen pieces for sure. I don't think any of them are quite Hoopy or Adler in terms of their upside, but I think all three of those guys should get a shot sooner. I mean, look at this bullpen right now. You guys said it off the top of the show. Like, this bullpen is so terrible in Chicago right now. I would love to see a Coulson or an Ellard or a Coffey in Chicago soon, because why not? Coffey's been good this year. He got the bump earlier. Coulson started in Birmingham, is transitioned to a reliever this year, looks really good out of the bullpen. So I think any of those guys could be bullpen pieces. And I think Burke, they might want to keep him as a starter, but with all that starting depth in Birmingham, I'd honestly rather see Burke just become a really solid reliever, which I think he could. So all four of those guys really, in my mind, are near league ready relief options, which is good to have.
So what's the story on Burke? Because I know going into 23, there was a lot of the discussion of like, okay, who could be this year's Davis Martin? It kind of comes 100%. Out of nowhere, and Sean Burke seemed to be the name that everybody referenced most often, but not great numbers and only 36 innings pitched.
Yeah, I mean, it's last year it was a shoulder injury. So he started the season. I talked to him a few weeks, like 2 months ago, and he was telling me like, he started the season and didn't feel great health wise and kind of was pitching through it for a month or two. And then immediately went down, ended up getting shoulder surgery last year, shut down his arm completely, was recovering this winter into the even spring training. He was still kind of going through recovery, made 3 starts in Arizona in the complex league earlier this year. And now is back in Charlotte. But, last year was kind of just a wash for him. Unfortunately, it was just a year. He just wasn't healthy. He wasn't right. Which is a bummer to see. But this year he's come back and it's not great. But at the same time, 32 strikeouts in 17 and 2/3 innings between Arizona and Charlotte. The strikeout numbers are there. Even in Birmingham, he's been striking out a lot of guys, but the command is iffy at times, leaves balls over the plate a little bit too often, is kind of home run dependent. He ends up giving up a decent amount of home runs at times. So we'll see what happens with Burke, but last year was really just a wash for him. He's not going to have quite the pedigree he did coming out of 2022 where he was really good, but at the same time, still, a former 3rd round pick who I think could be at the very least a really good bullpen piece.
And then tell us about Coulson and his season in AAA this year.
Yeah, we got to remember Coulson's young. And Coulson has missed a lot of time the past few years. He hasn't had a season-ending injury, but he's missed a good amount of time the past 2 seasons. Last year, he was kind of up and down. He was sick at one point. He had a nagging injury that was bothering him. So, this is a guy that only has, 150-ish games before this season in minor league ball. And yeah, the pedigree, he's number 1 prospect in the system, top 20 in baseball. That's a lot of pressure. He handles it really well. The dude's really mature. He does a really good job kind of limiting the pressure on him and just kind of tuning out the noise as much as he can. But this year's been a learning curve. He's faced guys who are professional pitchers. I mean, a lot of guys in AAA are guys that have big league experience and all that. And he's trying to figure things out. It hasn't been the best, but it hasn't been the worst either. He's still walking a good amount. He's still he's starting to tap into that power. We've seen a few home runs from him that have been like, whoa, this guy is mashing, right? he's striking out more than he does and more than his profile does. But I think a lot of that is him trying to find that power because he knows he has more impact to add compared to last year. And he's just trying to figure out how to really bring that power to the table. So I think with him, it's just a maturity. It's just giving him time, letting him work, figuring out what the approach for him is at that level. I think this whole year just needs to be in Charlotte, right? Like I don't really see the reason to bring him up this year for a team that is terrible. And they might do it in September and that's fine, right? But like from now until the end of August, at the very least, he needs to just be in Charlotte. He needs to just work through what he's working through and learn how to adapt to pitchers that are pitching him a little bit smarter than he was facing in the earlier parts of his career. So I'm not worried about it. I'm really not. I know some people have seen some of the numbers and the strikeout numbers and been started to get a little bit panicky about him. I really am not concerned about Coulson. I just think he's being pushed because he's the top prospect in the system and he needs to spend this whole year working through it in the AAA level.
Where is he in the lineup generally? I know he was leading off early in the season. Is he still batting leadoff for them?
He's mostly hitting 2-3 for them right now.
Okay.
Let me pull this up. I think he's been, especially with Ramos back there, I think he's mostly been hitting 2 lately. Now he's hitting 4 this week. So he's been moving around a little bit. They've definitely been moving him lately, seeing what kind of worked best for him, anywhere from 2 to 4 in recent weeks. But I'm not too worried, honestly.
I'm good. I like that.
Potentially slot as a big league in a big league lineup. Is he a 2-hitter? Is he a 3-hitter?
I think he's a 2-hitter. I think that's the ideal guy you want to be your 2-hitter because I think he's going to walk a lot. I think he's going to have moments where he taps into that power. I don't think he has enough hit tool to be a leadoff guy, and I don't think he has enough power to be, a 4 guy or 3 maybe. But I think the 2 spot is really what I'd like to see him settle into.
Yeah, I'm concerned about his numbers down there.
Why?
They're not very good.
Yeah, it seemed like Elijah took offense to that, OJ.
They're not very good.
22-year-old in AAA.
They're not very good. Lenin Sosa goes down there, destroys that league. Everybody that goes down there destroys that league. I look at the guys. This is probably the worst assembled AAA team in a long time that I've seen as an extension of the big league team. I'm like here just roasting people. I just want to see Chucky Robinson come to the big leagues again. I think he needs more time. The next coming of Charles Johnson. He hasn't been in the big league since he was with Cincinnati, but Coulson's numbers.
This is sick.
I'm just being honest. His numbers are not when I'm thinking this is going to translate. Maybe he does better in the big leagues because Chicago just doesn't better. But in a hitter-friendly park, in a place where we've seen guys go down there and destroy and smash,
it's a boom.
That have struggled. His numbers are not great.
As a 22-year-old who only had 37 games in AA and was already pushed to AAA, that you got to give that context. I get what you're saying, and I understand why.
No, I'm saying the fact that so he's going to be up in 25.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, not saying maybe not even to start the season, but at some point in 2025 he'll be up for sure. A lot of people think he'll be up this year.
Maybe not Noah Schultz. Maybe not Noah Schultz. Baltz Gonzo. Maybe not Noah Schultz. Might change my pick on the bust.
You think Coulson? Oh my God! You're just looking to be cynical about somebody.
No. Stop. There's going to be a bust.
Of course there is. Yeah, but you're looking to be cynical.
I've been on Noah. Hold on. I've been on Noah, and I get Gonzo grief every single day that it's going to be Noah. Now I'm looking now that we're really looking at the numbers, I'm looking at Coulson, and I see what everybody's doing. And I look at his profile picture, and I look at the stuff, and I say,
the bus is
Coulson. I look at his profile picture.
I trust me. And by the way, I got his background too of how he is. So I got the background. So I said, I look at it and I said, okay, AAA, Moncada killed AAA, Pantera killed AAA, Andrew Vaughn killed AAA. Like we know guys that have come up to the big leagues and have struggled that have destroyed AAA, and you're not destroying it. You haven't destroyed anything. So I'm looking at it like, okay. If Coulson was not picked, okay, let's put it this way. Coulson Montgomery is not. This is an exercise they do in scout school. Coulson Montgomery is not picked in the first round. He's not a first round pick. You don't know his name. You just go and look at his makeup and his stats. Scout him then.
It's pretty subjective, but I get what you're saying.
Because by the way, this is what Gonzo talks about, the 100 prospect level. If you want to have a good time, go look at the top prospects of the White Sox. 18, 19, 20, 21, the guys that everyone was saying they were going to make it. They're going to big bust. So him right here, right now, again, a lot of pressure being a first rounder. But if you take away the first round, okay, like let's put an exercise. I take the first round thing away from Coulson and I put it on the Brooks kid. And I put the Brooks kid as a first rounder. And he becomes a marketing guy that everybody starts looking at and all that information. That's what I'm talking about. Like when you look at Carroll's numbers in Birmingham, at the highest level that he's played, you're like, oh, like this guy deserves. When he walks into the office, he's like, I deserve to be called up. Coulson right now, the only reason he's getting called up because he's with the White Sox. He ain't getting called up with those numbers in another team that's competitive.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But the age in the context of where he's playing and who he's playing against is what you have to keep in mind. And that's to the benefit of both Carroll and
maybe one more year, maybe more time in the minor leagues. Or let him learn how to hit in the big leagues like Andrew Vaughn did. He's doing it. It's doable.
We'll get to that later in Pick to Click. Hint, hint. All right, so there's not a ton to talk about in Charlotte. Let's go down to Winston-Salem. Elijah, give us some names that stand out to you. And actually, you know what? I'm going to give you a name first. The one guy, and I got to double check to make sure that he's actually in Winston-Salem. No, he's not yet. He's still in Kannapolis. All right, we'll get to him later. George Wolkow is a guy I want to talk about.
Yeah, there's minimal in Winston. Kenny's the most exciting for sure. But is there anybody from Winston, you guys?
Now the best hitter in the system was Ryan Galaney at 195.
Yeah. Galaney, let's just talk about late round picks, right? Last year's, I think he was 13 last season. Last year's 13th rounder. Galaney's a guy that went to Wofford, which is a small school, but a good baseball program. Just overmatched every single pitcher in Kannapolis. This is a guy that was like, he had over 1,000 OPS in Canny to start the season. Just got promoted recently to Winston, 7 games now at Winston, but Galaney's a guy who has looked really good all season. A ton of juice in his bat, just natural power, pretty good plate approach. He's going to strike out a little bit. He's kind of this year's Tim Elko. He's kind of very similar to what we saw from Tim Elko last year, where Elko just dominated the lower levels of the minors because he was a college guy. He was experienced. He was older. Elko got to Birmingham, slowed down a little bit last year, right? But Galaney is someone who I think he needed a promotion. Like he probably shouldn't have even started in Kannapolis, to be honest. Like he was just way more advanced than every pitcher he faced there. Now he's in Winston. We'll see how it translates. It's going to be a big, right? He's going to be a big challenge. This is where he's going to start to see pitchers that are at his level, right? He was just better than all the guys in Kannapolis, dominated all season, power, juice, contact, really just all the above when he was in Candy this year. First base, third base, kind of, he can play a little bit of corner outfield, but primarily been playing mostly first for the White Sox since coming up. So this year he's pretty much he's played a little bit of left field, but primarily just first base this year. Probably a first base profile, but Galaney is someone who has been one of the best hitters in the system and deserves recognition for that for sure. We'll see how it translates at the upper levels.
Any other names in Winston-Salem we should know?
Come on. There's one name down there. You see, that's why people prospect, because he's not in the top 100.
Who is it?
Samuel Zavala.
Yeah. Zavala
he's 19, by the way. So talking about children, he'd be in high school if he was slow, like a little slow for mathematics.
Oh my God.
He'd be hitting with metal bats.
Yeah, Zavala's cool. Zavala's the third piece in that C straight, right? I mean, that was kind of originally when the news broke about the C steal, they just said Thorpe and Iriarte and maybe more to come or something, and it was really vague. And then 20 minutes later, it was like Samuel Zavala's the third piece, and it was like, oh, okay, there's a real third piece in this trade. That's cool to see. Zavala's cool. I mean, he's got a really good approach. I like the way he approaches his bats. Very smart in the box, especially 19-year-old, right? Good speed, good defense in the outfield. Definitely has struggled at the plate this year. I mean, he has not done quite what you were hoping from him. He's been rough. But
he's a bust. He's a bust. Can't believe he's hitting 195. He's a total bust.
Hey, if he was 24 in the first round pick, I'd be worried. I'm going to be honest. He's talking 22. About it right now. I'm talking right now. If he wasn't 19, this is real talk. So Venezuela, winter ball team. He was on the board to be 4th outfielder, a guy that we brought in, help out, play, get time. Right now, his name for what's been going on right now is like, you're going to come to mini camp. Maybe you're making the team. He went from like that much, which I think would be great for his development to go there, but he might be, again, that's why the minor leagues, I feel like he's going to be in this level a little bit longer than I thought.
Yeah.
Because he started off hot. The first 2 weeks, he was like really good. Right. And then
Yeah, no, I think he just needs time. I think the kid is really talented. He's got a lot of juice. He's got definitely more power than what he's showed so far this year. In addition to being already good with his speed, he's got some tools for sure. And he needs to spend the whole year in Winston. Zavala is someone who has a lot of upside. I still believe in it. He's still a top 30 prospect in the system for sure, regardless of these stats. Like, he's still probably top 20 in the system, honestly. It's going to take some time for him, and I think you just need to really give him this season in Winston just to spend the whole year there at 19 years old. if he gets to 20, if he gets double A at 20 next year, that's still really young for double A, right? So give him the entire season in Winston. I still have a lot of hope for Zavala. It hasn't been pretty so far, but I'm not worried about him yet at all.
He wants to go deep, Slav. He weighs like
So
10 pounds.
Elijah,
Yeah, he looks like a little kid.
Yeah.
according to that same time span of those 2 months, Riley Goins had the second best K percentage behind Schultz at 30.5% and also had a 1.06 whip.
Yeah.
Also, and that's with Winston McDougal. He's right behind him at 30.3% K rate. And McDaniel right behind him at 29.4% K rate.
Yeah. So Gowans is a funny one because Gowans is someone who was that last piece in that weird Aaron Bummer 5-player trade that was a bunch of guys who nobody's good at all. But at the same time, Gowans is looking like the most valuable piece from that trade, which is really funny because he was, a 9th rounder last year, 5-year college guy. So he's already 24 now, right? So being 24 in high A, like you want him to be doing this good. But he looks really good. He looks better than I expected. His numbers last year were really sharp coming out of college in his first few games with the Braves organization. And now in Winston this year, it hasn't been perfect, but 63 Ks, only 19 walks for Gowans, pretty minimal. I mean, he's really just gotten bit by the home run a few times, a few big homers that he's given up, but the numbers should be even better than they are. And Gowans is someone who I think who's put himself on the radar and could be, the next guy. Tyler Schweitzer just got called up to Birmingham. That's another guy who just took Thorpe's spot in the Birmingham rotation, a guy that was also pitching well in Winston this year, I should mention. But I think Gowans is looking like he might be the next guy now. At 24, he might be the next guy to go up once one of those Birmingham guys gets promoted to Charlotte or the White Sox, right? So Gowans is kind of come out of nowhere, not really a name many people knew in that trade, but looks like a piece and looks like he's really striking out guys at a high clip right now, which was good to see. And then McDougal is someone who, high draft pick out of high school, 5th rounder in 2021, a lot of potential. People had McDougal kind of last year as like a big breakout guy coming off of TJ. Struggled last year with his command. He couldn't quite find it. It hasn't been great this year for McDougal. I think that the strikeout stuff is there, but in general, he just doesn't look fully comfortable with his innings yet. He doesn't look like he's really attacking the zone the way he needs to be. I mean, 57 strikeouts in 44 innings is great to see, but then you look at the 27 walks, a few good amount of home runs given up, just giving up a lot of hits really in general, 41 hits across 44 innings. So McDougal still a high upside arm, still a top 30 guy for me, but in general needs to take a step forward. He is just 21 though, so he's still pretty young. And again, coming off only his second season coming off of TJ, right? So we'll see what happens in McDougal. Last year, I was a little bit more excited about him. I'm a little bit lower on him now, but I still think he's someone that will be in that Winston rotation probably this whole season. And then McDaniel is another guy who was an undrafted guy, just picked up kind of a random flyer, honestly, who last year was in Canny and didn't look great in Canny and took the game to a whole nother level. He was excellent to start this season in Kannapolis, 23 years old, right? So he kind of should be good in Kannapolis at that point. But this year has taken his game up a notch, looked really good in Canny, has struggled so far in Winston his first 3 games there. So we'll see if he can adjust. I'm not sure McDaniel stuff will play up at the next level, but really good stuff so far from him this year.
So when going through the system, obviously Birmingham has, the majority of the prospects. It looks like Kannapolis would be the next team, so to speak.
For sure.
I mentioned Wolkow earlier. I want you to tell me everything about him because every time I see a highlight clip, every time I look and see his body at age 18 and what he's doing, I'm just impressed and I've got high hopes.
Yeah, George is a great dude. I got to know him. I played against him in high school, actually. When my last year of high school was his first year of high school. And I played against him, and I remember being like, oh, that kid looks pretty huge. And then I remember one of my teammates being like, yeah, he's a freshman. He's a freshman on varsity, and he's 6'6" or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. That's totally not fair. But I got to know George pretty well over the last year. He's a cool dude. He's like, I know you can say this, and it can matter only a little bit, but like truly one of the most like well-spoken, intelligent players in this entire farm system. He is better at explaining himself and talking about the game than almost any prospect in the system. That's no shade to anybody else, but this is legitimately one of the most mature, smart 18-year-olds you will ever meet in baseball or outside of baseball, just in general. So he's really, really intelligent. He's got crazy good work ethic, pardon me, and is really just like, he's everything you can dream about, right? Like he's the guy, he's the prospect you look at and you're like, this can be the guy who's, not to say like this is too big of a comparison, but like Aaron Judge, right? Like this is the guy you look at and you're like, could this dude be Aaron Judge? Like maybe, right? Like
Aaron's not that bright.
Well, yeah, exactly. The difference there. That's true. But no, Wolkow the power is off the charts. He's incredibly strong. He put on 15 pounds of muscle this offseason after getting drafted. Already just a massive dude, right? I mean, he's listed at 6'7", 240. I'm pretty sure he's probably like 250 at this point, to be honest. Crazy amount of power. It just, for him, it's going to be about swing and miss, right? He's chasing a ton right now. The strikeouts are really high right now in his first stint, but 18 years old, right? Like crazy good arm in right field. He's going to be a corner outfielder with a really good arm, ridiculous amount of power. It's just going to come down to how much he can develop as a hitter and learn how to minimize, not swing. The swing's a little bit too long at times, but what do you expect from a guy who's 6'7" and 18 years old? I expect him to be whiffing a lot at this point, to be honest. But Wolkow's the guy you can dream on, right? He's the prospect on this Kannapolis roster where you can look at him and say, like, that could be a guy who just has absurd home run power numbers. It's going to take a long time. He should be in Kannapolis this entire season, but someone to dream on for sure.
So for him position wise though, so I know that he's going to be that big. So outfield, I'm assuming.
Right field. I think he's a right fielder. He played center field actually. All spring training he was playing center.
He played infield in high school.
He played third in high school for a while and then got moved to right field his senior year. So he kind of has that experience, but he's a right fielder. I think he's your stereotypical right fielder.
Would have loved to see this kid on the sauce.
Is he an actual right fielder or is he a DH
Yes.
burying?
No, he's very athletic. For a 6'7" guy, he can move. He's still in some bags in Kannapolis. Like he can move. He's seriously athletic, and that's why they were putting him in center field starting spring training. But he's a right fielder. He's a legit.
Look at his running videos.
Yeah, he can move.
He
can move for sure.
If they miss on like if you miss on a guy like this, the way that he looks and feels and stuff like that, it's okay.
You took a shot.
Yes.
You swung for the fences.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, his makeup is like
10 times out of 10, you take a shot on him for sure.
Yeah, like
100%.
his size, his power. Like, if at worst, if he doesn't play, it's like going to be like he'll be like Gavin Sheets. You know what I mean? Like he's gonna be able to. He's gonna move up the level of baseball. Like he's gonna go up there. Is he gonna be an everyday big leaguer? I don't know, but
yeah,
I have this kid, so I'm gonna talk about like athletic ability from what another scout told me, that he's probably in the last long time that they've had a guy with this size makeup off on the offensive side in a very, very long time.
No, I agree.
Otherwise,
like the upside.
If Borchard and Courtney Hawkins like combined, right?
Correct. But he's more of a baseball player,
correct, than just an athlete.
Because he played. This is like he's kind of like the judge. Like he's this size, but baseball is number one. Where Borchard was football, then baseball. So his IQ on the baseball. And when you talked about Elijah, when you talked about the swings and misses, if someone's going to strike out in the system, is this guy?
Yes, exactly.
I just want
that's fine. And that's fine. Yes. And he's already hit ridiculous home runs.
This is a guy that I argue with my dad. This is a guy I need exit velocity from.
Yep. and he's already shown it, right? We've already seen him hit massive home runs.
40 home runs. Let's go. I don't care.
Yep. Yes, completely. Wolkow's the guy to dream on in this lineup for sure.
Any other Kannapolis names to know about?
So, I got a bigger name for him.
Yep.
This guy's my
There's
second.
no bigger name than 6'7", 250 pounds.
No, there definitely is. This is my second favorite arm in the system, right behind Schultz. Is Grant Taylor.
Yeah.
After throwing TJ, he's throwing 100, and you can talk about his off speed, but go ahead.
Yeah, Grant Taylor is really good. The White Sox stole a first rounder last year, and I don't say that lightly. They got a guy who was going to be a top 20 pick before having Tommy John, and I think teams are scared of that for some reason, but you really shouldn't be these days. I mean, the amount of guys that have Tommy John and come back just as good, if not better, is off the charts right now, so I don't know why teams were scared of him. Getting him at 51st overall was a steal. This is a first-round pick. This guy, the White Sox basically got 2 first-rounders last year in Gonzalez and Grant Taylor. He was the number 2 to Paul Skeens in that rotation in LSU. He was going to be before his injury. Like, this guy is a special arm. I think Gonzo's right. I think he's the second highest upside arm in this system behind Grant Taylor. So I think it's like he's the guy that the other guy, or not behind Grant Taylor, behind Noah Schultz, but he's the other guy other than Schultz where you can look at him and see ace potential. Coming off of Tommy John is tough, and you see a lot of guys come back with that stuff, but they won't be able to command it. Grant Taylor is not only showing his stuff right now, he's commanding it at an elite level. Taylor has 1 walk compared to 25 strikeouts so far in 16 innings in Kannapolis. he is just dominating, and he should be, right? Like Kannapolis, like he needs a promotion. Talk about guys that need a promotion. Like there is zero reason this guy should be pitching in single A. I don't care if he's coming off Tommy John. He's just way too good for that level. I think he can come back and go to, he should be in Winston pretty immediately. I think in the next few weeks, we'll see him get a bump regardless of his innings limit. He's only throwing 4 innings a game, right? He's on that Noah Schultz thing sort of to a degree because he kind of is coming off that Tommy John, but the plus fastball, it's 90 to 90, it's 97 to 99 coming off of Tommy John. He's touched 100 a bunch of different times this season already. A cutter that's already very, very good. The cutter at 93 to 95 is already kind of a really good offering. Mixes that with more of a traditional slider, and then can mix in some other things here and there with the changeup that he's been working on as well. But Taylor is someone that, to have a pitcher in single A in his first professional season that already has 2 pitches that can be graded as 65 or better. I think it's a 70 grade fastball, probably a 65 grade cutter, in addition to a slider that's 55, 60 maybe. I mean, it's really, really good. The way he manipulates the ball, his extension, over 7 feet of extension, he comes at you. So, 98 is looking more like 100 when it's coming out of his hand. It's moving too. Like his fastball naturally has a little bit of tail on it. So it's more of a 2-seam style, and it's already at that high 90s. Taylor is someone that they're going to be patient with because of the Tommy John. But given everything that he did at LSU and given the upside he has, Grant Taylor is to me is looking like a top 5 to 6 prospect in the entire organization right now.
Wow.
But is he from Illinois? No.
He is not. Yeah, Taylor is a beast. I'm higher on him than almost anybody we've talked about on this show, to be honest.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
I like to hear it.
I like to hear it.
Yeah.
I just want George to make it so I can see how many times I'm going to say that he's from Downers Grove.
Right. I'll say it 1,000,000 times for sure. But yeah, Taylor's great. That's the head of that rotation. But and Gonzo, I get why you were excited about him. I mean, he looks really good. To be able to command the way he's commanding with his stuff right off of Tommy John is pretty not what we see. I think I said this before, he's everything that we wanted Peyton Pallette to be, but he's way better. So I think, he's what you wanted to see from Pallette, a guy who was, they back-to-back years, they took a chance on a guy coming off college, got TJ last year of school, right? But a lot of stuff to dream on, and Taylor is immediately putting it together already. 0.72 whip this season in his first 5 games. So this guy is going to be in Winston. I think he might even be in Birmingham by the end of the year. That's how talented he is. And it's really just going to be about building up his arm this year and next year.
So I was going to ask, because of the injury, if you think they're going to kind of slow play with him, or do they just let him go if he's tearing it up?
They will slow play him in terms of innings, but they shouldn't slow play him in terms of promotions. I think it's similar to Schultz, right? Like Schultz, it's an aggressive promotion to have him in Birmingham already, but he's way better than everybody in Winston. You saw it immediately this season. Same thing with Taylor. Yes, he's coming off Tommy John, but you immediately see him being way better than everybody in Kannapolis. I think he'll be in Winston this year. I think he might even get to Birmingham later in the year.
Wow.
So to wrap up, 3 other names that me and you spat with, Edrin, Batista, Kenner, and Gordon.
Yeah, Aldrin Batista, guys. That's a name that I would put on your radar. If you have never heard of him, most people have not. I've been preaching about him on Twitter for the past few months. Aldrin Batista is a stud. He is going to move from kind of borderline top 30 to borderline top 15 in my top 30 for the White Sox. This is a guy who is super funky. He's got kind of that old school wind up where he rocks back a little bit, and it's funky looking. But Batista has some really impressive stuff. His fastball has a ton of run on it. It's a sinker, but it's a really sharp sinker where it's mid 90s, but it has a ton of movement, a lot of induced vertical break as well. And then you've got a slider that is really naturally kind of sharp and really bites off his hand, jumps out of his hand. His stuff is just lively. The numbers have come down a little bit. He had a rough start either last week or 2 weeks ago, but in general, Batista is someone that I think at 21 years old, just turned 21, is the youngest arm in that Canny rotation and should be in Winston as well with Grant Taylor very soon. I really like Aldrin Batista. I just have become a big fan of his. I think the way his stuff looks is really good. It's going to take him a little bit more time to fine tune it compared to some of these other guys like Taylor. But Batista is someone that acquired last year from the Dodgers just in exchange for international signing money. The Dodgers went out and got a big time Korean guy. So they needed money in that international pool to sign him. So they flipped Batista and Maximo Martinez as well to the White Sox. He's a stud. I really like Batista.
So what's his velo like?
94, 95, mid 90s or so, but mid 90s with a lot of movement on it.
Well, he's
it's
young,
a lot of natural movement.
I'm just saying
he could gain too. Yeah, he's lean too. So I think
hard throwing Dominicans. We need more hard throwing Dominicans.
There you go. Yeah. No, he can get up.
White Sox.
We need more Tiago Vieras.
Well, he couldn't throw strikes.
Batista throws strikes. That's what's good about him. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm saying like his not like look like his age and his again, you look at a name like this, like unless you're like really into the White Sox, because again, he's not talked about because of the level that he's playing in. But when you look at the deal that he's at and the numbers that he's put, that's like something you can work with. Again,
I'm big on him for sure. Yeah, so Batista's great. I think that's a name that everybody should have their eye on. I've been preaching him on Twitter for the past few months. I think he's definitely a lower level name that people don't talk about that should be on radars. And then the last two guys, Lucas Gordon, Seth Keener, both draft picks from last year, both college guys. Keener was a reliever at Wake Forest because of how loaded Wake Forest was in college. So he's a guy that, I think Keener, he's transitioning, right? He's becoming a starter now at the big league, at the professional level after being a reliever in college, which is usually it's the opposite, right? So it's a weird kind of transition for Keener. One of the most cerebral dudes I've ever talked to. He's incredibly smart. He's like a huge chess guy, reads a ton of books about psychology. He's super, super, just thinky. And he's the type of guy who I think almost needs to, when I talked to Pat Leland, the manager in Kannapolis, he said Keener almost needs to think less sometimes because he's super smart and really, really thinks about the game, but he needs to kind of tune that down at times. So Keener is someone who has a lot of good stuff, really good fastball slider combo. He could end up going back into a relief role eventually because the command isn't quite there, but it's hard transitioning into a starter. So I think I'm okay with the command being a little iffy so far this year. And then Gordon is the exact opposite type of profile, where Gordon is a really high floor guy, college guy, pitched 4 years in the Big 12, right? So he's got a lot of advanced college experience. Definitely just pitchability over stuff. Could he be like Mason Adams? Maybe if his stuff ticks up a little bit, I could see it. I don't think his stuff is quite as good as Adams, but Gordon's just getting outs. Gordon's just dominating single A guys. Also a guy who, 23 years old, like just doesn't need to be in single A. I think he'll also be in high A soon. This is what we talk about. The depth in this system. There is too many pitchers for rotation spots right now. Like there's 3 guys, Batista, Gordon, and Taylor all should be in Winston by now, but there's not room because you have a full rotation of exciting guys in Winston. And then you've got guys in Birmingham, the best rotation in minor league baseball. So where do these guys go? What's going to happen soon enough is you're going to have to see some of these Birmingham guys go to Charlotte or to Chicago, and then everything's going to trickle from there because this entire Kannapolis rotation is, most of them, if not all of them, are good enough to pitch in Winston now or pretty soon.
Talking about prospects, I love the fact that you just, I love the fact that you just mentioned what Leland said.
Yeah, no, I talked to Leland.
Thinks too much because the whole time I was thinking about, why if you're so smart, why don't you go, go work at a hedge fund, playing baseball, don't overthink. I like him. And I think he's going to be a guy that the Sox need to keep in the system as a coach and develop him. I think he's a future big league coach.
I think he's great. I had a great interview with him a few weeks ago. He was super, super insightful about all his players.
I'll take him today over Pedro. I think he will mess up the pinch hitting part. He's been around enough.
Be down. But yeah, no, the system is exciting for sure.
By the way, so today, Gonzo, after this whole conversation, which I told you that I did not want to have, Elijah, by the way, this is amazing. I don't know if you know other systems. The White Sox.
No, this is my forte.
Well, you and I are going to talk because you made my job in winter ball like a lot easier. You know your stuff. But remember when I said that we should trade both of them, Pantera and Crochet? Now I'm going back on the Pantera. White Sox need outfielders, and everyone that's coming up that's a potential good outfielder is a lot. It's very, very young. So
you're not wrong.
And I can see the depth in pitching, and that's why I think they're leaning on the Crochet move because they need position players.
I agree with that. I think
the outfield situation with Andrew being in left for the foreseeable future. Then you got Pantera, and then when you look at right field, I'm trying to make the lineup for 2025.
Oh God, I've done that many times.
You know what? Yeah. No, but here's the funny part, Slav. If you gave Ozzy this lineup that I'm making right now, like senior, and saying you got 2 years to develop these guys, he would have a manager like that you can entice to come in. Meaning if you're doing the project, bringing up the rookies, not having, because it'd be in right field, for example, you have Colas, from a prospect standpoint, and there's nobody else that you mentioned.
The thing is, they're gonna trade for guys. That's the thing. The outfield's gonna be a lot of new guys for sure.
You keep Andrew and Sheets, okay. Then at second, you're you keep Lenine and be the veteran guy there, but then you bring up Brooks, Jacobs, and have them battle it out. And then third base and Brian, you can literally have a second, third short rotational until you bring up Coulson and you say, okay, you're the shortstop. Catcher's already set. Cuero and Corey Lee, that's 2020. I'm not even thinking about, unless injury impending, Pantera in center, Andrew in left, and then you bring up the pitching staff, and then you kind of shovel. But from a position player standpoint, I'm not signing a veteran, shortstop or a veteran second baseman, unless it's a move that's too good to be true.
It's an
I'm
interesting.
letting you
It's
guys
an interesting
know.
dynamic. I think you still need to supplement though, because that's the thing. You can't have a team that's entirely rookies. I love the idea of leaning into the rookies, but you have a ton of money coming off the books with Moncada, with Eloy, with other guys, right? You're going to have only 50. I think it's about only $60 million under payroll going into next season, right? So there's a ton of money to spend, and because of the pitching depth, you can afford to spend on some hitters. It's just a matter of actually doing it. It's complicated and it's tricky. And I've kind of tried to break this down on my own and my thoughts over the past few months, but there is a path to a decently competitive 2025 team, and especially a 2026 team.
Oh, no.
But a lot has to go right, obviously.
Of course, it always does.
So Elijah, we wrapped up the farm system. Junior, we're going to add another name to your list that you're creating because later this month, we have the 5th selection, Elijah. Let's go through some names right now of who could possibly be there that we can draft.
Yeah.
I'll start with giving you a couple names, I guess. So you could go with Connor Griffin. It was a position player that I would have right there, along with 2 other arms potentially if you want, to add to Schultz in them, and that would be either Hagen Smith or Chase Burns.
Yeah, I'm very against drafting a pitcher, to be honest with you. I think because of everybody we just talked about, I get the idea of drafting the top talents. And if there was somebody that was at the Paul Skeens level, then I'm okay going pitcher there maybe. I don't think Burns is quite at that level. I think Burns would be the pitcher I'd want if you were to go pitcher. I think he's a little more volatile than a Skeens. I definitely don't want to do anything related to Hagen Smith. I get the appeal of a super toolsy, lefty that's been dominant in college, right? But a lot of arm risk there, I think. I think he could be a guy that runs into command issues as he gets a little bit older. I just don't think a pitcher is the move there. I really don't. I think this is a team that when you look at the system, you see all these pitchers and you see a lot of lack of hitting depth in comparison to the pitching. I like Connor Griffin a lot. I think Connor Griffin, in my opinion, is probably the most likely pick right now. If you were to say, like, right now, who do I think the White Sox are going to draft? I'd probably go Griffin because he's a high school guy. He'll probably be the number 1 high school guy taken. You can get probably a decent discount on him. I don't think you'd have to sign him for the slot. I think you can go under slot with a guy like Griffin. And I think you get an outfielder with a ton of potential. And that's got, after getting Wolkow last year in the draft, getting a few other guys, I think Connor Griffin's the one who you can look at as, the really high upside, young, toolsy hitter that's the route you want to go. Instead of going a current guy, you can get that kind of super high upside outfielder that can be kind of part of that next core beyond the guys that are currently a year out or are going to be coming up soon. So I like Griffin. I think the other high school option is Bryce Rayner, who's a shortstop in high school. He's another guy who I think was a pitcher a little bit. There was talks about two-way stuff. I think he's going to be a shortstop. That's kind of the thing there. Could be an outfielder too. Super athletic, pretty toolsed up for sure. I think he's kind of known for a blend of power, and Harvard Westlake, right, produced a ton of talent. That was where Giolito went. That's where a bunch of other guys have gone. So I think Rayner's another guy that would be pretty common. I think he's gonna be an infielder though. That makes it a little bit less interesting, but a lot of athleticism, room to grow, strong. Just definitely has that hitter, stud hitter upside. Really good arm as well. So you can see him at shortstop, but maybe you end up putting him in a corner outfield potentially. I could see a world where he ends up being, even a center fielder. Maybe that could happen. Maybe third even. He kind of questions around the defense, I think, but in general, powerful lefty, kind of that Coulson Montgomery breed. I think coming out of high school, probably a little bit better coming out of high school than Montgomery was. But Rayner's another guy I could see there. So it's interesting. I want to go the hitting route, but two high school hitters being big options, it's risky, right? When you're drafting an 18-year-old, and this is a team that you're hoping is going to be competitive in 2026. Those guys are further out. It's going to take them longer. But I do like both Griffin and Rayner a lot.
Any other names, Gonzo?
There's a few.
That's
There's a few
it from
others.
me.
So
Yeah,
I'll just ask, just because
Okay.
Shohei Ohtani has changed the whole world of baseball over the last few years. We've seen more of the two-way hitters and
Yeah.
pitchers. And you look at a few mock drafts and you see the Florida kid getting mocked to the White Sox at 5, Kegley and Owen. What are your thoughts on him as a prospect?
Yeah. I get the appeal. I get he's the flash, right? It's the flashy, like this guy could be amazing. He could be whatever you want him to be. He's not a pitcher. Kags is not going to be a pitcher long term. From most guys I've talked to, I talked to a lot of guys who are, I'm friends with a few guys at Baseball America and people who are, know their stuff when it comes to college guys. Everybody I've talked to thinks he's not a pitcher. Ultimately, I don't think he's going to be an arm. Just a lot of volatility with the way he pitches. So at that point, you're drafting a first baseman with a ton of power and a lot of risk, right? I don't want a first baseman in the top 5 picks. That's the way. It might be kind of silly of me to look at it that way, but like, Andrew Vaughn, right? Like we don't, I mean, drafted him third overall. And like, and I'm not just saying him, there's a lot of other examples of it, but in general, like I just don't want a power hitting heavy whiffing first baseman with a top 5 pick. I just think that's kind of not the thing you have to do with the White Sox right now. I think you're looking for upside. And I think, yes, Kaggs has, 40 homer upside. Like he's got ridiculous pop, but I just don't think that's the type of profile you want to take in the top 5. I think you need somebody who you either go the route of a more safe, developed college bat, or you go the route of the high upside high school guys, and you save some money for later rounds. Braden Montgomery is the other one who's also worth a mention. He just broke his ankle last week, unfortunately, during the College World Series playoffs, during Super Regionals. Texas A&M outfielder. That's the guy you look at as like, oh, he could be a big league piece in 2 years or, soon, right? So the way he's hitting, he's a switch hitting outfielder, a lot of upside, just a lot of pop, a lot of speed, but a broken ankle going into the draft is a little bit scary. I don't think it's a huge deal. It might not, he's still going to probably be a top 10 pick regardless. But I think, Montgomery is a guy that you could look at as somebody who could be a powerful corner outfielder pretty soon, which makes it kind of interesting to consider. But I still think one of those 2 high school guys is probably most likely for the Sox.
Who's your pick if you're there at number 5?
I think Griffin. Yeah, I think Griffin is probably the pick. I think right now I still have to dive a little bit deeper into some of these guys and really look at some film. But I think Griffin is the highest upside hitter from high school guys, and I think you can save some money on him, save some money, get some really really good college guys in the second, third rounds, and allows you to get the highest upside high school bat.
All right, last thing for you before we let you go. Lots of trade rumors as we get to closer to the trade deadline. We're still quite a ways away, but we're going to hear Luis Roberts' name, Garrett Crochet's name, Eric Fetty's name a lot over the next 6 weeks. Plus, you wrote an article earlier today about some trade packages potentially for Luis Robert Jr. So just kind of run through some of the fits potentially, and then like a star prospect that you're getting back in that trade, or 2, I guess. Based on the team that would be the trade partner. And then in general, just do you think that they should trade Luis Robert and or Garrett Crochet?
It's a tricky situation, right? Like I get why people don't want to, but I also think like this team is 2 years away from being competitive. I understand why you want to keep some guys, but I also think like you have to look at the reality of it. And like, I don't know if the White Sox are re-signing either of these players. So is it the right time to cash in? In terms of Luis, I wrote an article on 5 teams. I put 5 teams out there. I think there was a report from John Heyman earlier. There was the 6 teams that were potentially pursuing him too, but I really think there's 2 clear fits. I think there's a lot of other teams that could work, but I think it's the Mariners and the Phillies. If somebody's going to get this trade done, I think it's one of those 2 teams. They both need an oomph. I think the Phillies are they've been on the edge of the World Series for 3 years in a row now, right? Like they're the team that like, this is their year without Acuna, without Strider. Like they can take the Braves this year and they can take the NL this year. And I think their one hole in their lineup is center field. So I think if you plug Luis into that Phillies lineup, it's the best lineup in baseball. And I think that's going to become really appealing to them. When you look at prospects, a lot of people would call for Andrew Painter, who's currently recovering from surgery, but top 3 pitching prospect in baseball. I don't want to go that route. I don't really see the idea of it. I think if you get Painter, that's the headline and you're getting a bunch of other small pieces. I would rather get their second, third, and fourth prospects, which is what I did in the proposal. Aiden Miller, first rounder last year. Aiden Miller, who I wanted the White Sox to draft instead of Jake Gonzalez. He's been my guy for a while. I really, really like Aiden Miller. He's been unbelievable to start his professional career this season. Third baseman, most likely in the future. Another infielder, right? And then Starlin Caba, also the Phillies, is a complex guy, but one of the most impressive players in the complex rookie ball level right now. Super toolsy, really, really good defensive infielder, great contact and speed skills. And then you look at the Mariners, and the Mariners probably have, I would say, the second best hitting depth in their system behind obviously the Orioles, who are ridiculous. But the Mariners have, 5 top 100 level hitters right now in their system. So you could really piece together any of those guys and make a package out of it. I did Colt Emerson as kind of the ideal target, former first round pick. Emerson is looking like a stud right now this season. He's really talented. I think Emerson or Cole Young, one of their 2 stud shortstops, would be kind of the headliner. Johnny Formello is the other guy in the Mariners org. Also Lázaro Montes. Those are both really big swinging. Formello's an outfielder. Montes is probably more of a first base DH guy, but both really impressive young hitters. All those guys in the Mariners system are 21 or younger, right? So you'd be getting back 3, really good top 100 level-ish hitting prospects. So those are the 2 teams I really like for Luis. I don't think the Sox do it. It's 3.5 years of control. I think they're going to be the price is going to be too high. I just don't think anybody's going to match the price and then match the asking price. I think the Mariners or Phillies could, and I think they could find a really good middle ground where both teams are satisfied, but I don't think the White Sox are going to budge, and I don't think Guess is going to budge on his price. So ultimately, I don't think Robert gets moved. Crochet, I think you got to. I think you have to. As Junior just mentioned, the pitching depth in the system makes it more manageable to trade him, and then you can get back, some serious hitting. You can get 2 top 100 level hitters right now for Garrett Crochet. And the reality is, like, I like Crochet a lot. He's a stud. He looks great this year. The dude's never been a starting pitcher. This is his first season being a starter. We don't know how his arm's going to hold up fully, and we don't know what he's going to look like in a year or two from now if he can go down with an injury. There's a lot of volatility with pitching these days, and if you can turn his hot season into 2-3 elite hitting prospects, I feel like you have to pull the trigger on that.
I'll be honest, Junior and I were kind of in the same boat about, well, we don't want to talk too much prospects. Like, yes, it's nice to look ahead, but at the same time, I'll be honest, you've opened my eyes. I'm trying to, still reserve judgment until these guys are more advanced or make it to the big leagues. But it's exciting to hear some of the top tier talent that we just really haven't seen in the system being developed by the White Sox. Junior loves to bring up the 2018 top 100 list. They had like 9 guys on the White Sox, but those were mostly guys who were acquired via trade, and the White Sox just either didn't develop enough or, had to ultimately trade away. I think Kopech and like Eloy are the only 2 left. I think Moncada was aged out at the time, but it's exciting to know that there's some really top tier talent in the pipeline coming soon. So we appreciate you coming on and shedding some light on that. Where can people follow you on social media, read your articles, tell us where to find more about Elijah?
I appreciate it. First of all, I know I talked for a long time today, so I appreciate you guys
That's great.
listening, and I hope it was.
We can't get out of the Junior to shut up half the time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
3 hours talking about the Blackhawks. So
everything that you shared today, Elijah. When I was very hesitant when we said we're going to do a prospect show, because we always talk about the same 5 prospects. You can guess some of the guys that I usually tear down when we talk about the prospect show, but I've been sitting here and listening because the way that you've breaking them down, and you're not just saying this guy's going to be good because he got picked. Like, you broke down guys in rounds where, the front office only knows how good they are or what they believe in them. So like Slav, I'm the same boat of like, wow, okay, we have depth. You broke it down like on a development standpoint on what's good and what's negative about the player. And why they've either been up or down. So like, you cleared it up for me on a couple guys that I was like, oh yeah, this guy is a little old, but now I understand like why they're there. So please tell us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, for sure. Really good. No, I appreciate it. I've been grinding for the prospect side of things for sure. Elijah EV8 on Twitter is where I post, on X, whatever you want to call it, is where I post most of my stuff. And then justbaseball.com is the company that been working for the last 2 years. Great baseball coverage for all teams. I'm kind of the head White Sox writer there. So anything I write, White Sox really will be there. And then the FutureSox podcast as well. Every week I'm on there talking White Sox prospects. We talk about top performers of the week. I have interviews there as well. I have probably about 35 interviews with White Sox prospects over the last year from the FutureSox podcast as well. So you can hear from players directly from a lot of these top guys talked about. So I'll have more coming this offseason. I'm going to be in Charlotte and Kannapolis later this summer talking to some guys in person. So that'll be fun content to put out there later this summer as well. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. I'm always happy to talk prospects. And for anybody listening, you can always you can DM me, you can at me on Twitter. I'm always happy to answer prospects.
I already DM'd you a guy's name that I have, a catcher. He's 19.
Nice.
He's on our team in Venezuela, but
Sweet.
I want to hear your
Junior's is going to use you, as a scout.
Go ahead. Honestly,
are you a reporter, Elijah? Are you like a journalist?
Yeah, I write journalism for Just Baseball and some other stuff. I'm still in school, but
you don't cover people.
We'll see what happens.
I'm just to be honest. I don't know what you want to do in your future. You're not breaking down players as like a journalist.
I have been. Yeah, no, I have been.
I'm saying it, but you don't like the way that you're breaking down players is like how people in player development in front office.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I've been interning for an agency for a while, so we'll see what things.
You're not breaking down players like reporters. They're like, "What's your favorite food?" Like me,
right?
I'm looking at guys that guy's
stuff.
You're not.
I like to think more of an analyst than a reporter.
You were talking like you were somebody, that was like scouting background. I'm gonna be honest. This is gonna sound horrible. Okay, mind you, I have not been around White Sox people in a while, but you broke down our minor league system better than people did former minor league systems on the breakdown of players that are
I appreciate
employed by
that.
that
I really
team.
do. Yeah, that's.
I don't know if
mean,
that's
honestly,
a good thing or a bad thing as a fan, but for you, it's a great thing.
I'll
For
take it as
White
a
Sox
compliment.
fans, I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah. But I appreciate that. I really do. I love the prospect side of things. I enjoy it. I think it's fun. It makes it more enjoyable to be a fan. And I'm embracing it. So I think it's exciting, and we'll see where it takes us. And I'm hoping it leads to a winning team in the future.
We'll definitely have you on again, maybe in the offseason after
Anytime.
the draft, or definitely some point in the future to talk more about some of these guys as the promotions kind of start to come to the big league level, and guys make it up in the advanced levels of the minor league system. I'm all aboard the Grant Taylor train. You sold me. You sold me 100%.
Yeah,
So Elijah, thanks so much for joining us, man. We'll be in touch soon.
appreciate it, fellas. Thank you so much.
See you, bud. All right, Junior.
Tell
us.
To be honest, if Ozzie Guillen got the job today, number one, and now I'm like, okay, maybe Ozzie should get the job, and we bring up all the prospects and try to see what we can do in 2 years, I would bring him and hire him as an advisor just for us as the bullshit meter. And when they break down a player, be like, hey, come here, and have him just like give his take. You know what's hard about minor league baseball? And again, I have a scouting background, and that's why I don't think I went down that route, is because when you're doing minor league baseball, it's really hard to analyze so many players and really be into it, because it's not about wins and losses. It's about the player development and like where they're at. And if you compare it to like the big league roster is like 26 guys. And then the guys on the 40-man roster. Minor leagues, it's like everyone. And the reason that I thought he was interesting and the stuff that he was saying was really valuable and why people should listen, he didn't just give me Coulson and Brian and Noah. Like, those are the easy ones. Like everyone's talked about those guys, and sports radios cover them. Like the kid Brooks, like guys that you look at the numbers and you're looking at them and like you're going in. The kid George, the big guy in the mind, like he really broke down guys that are not marketable, meaning from a standpoint of like selling clickbaits, but from a baseball standpoint, when you look at a big league roster, you don't see first rounder. You see a mix. And the other part of that is that at the moment where they do find themselves, where they have a nice little base, then prospects become guys that are tradable and guys that they're really developing. So I know this is like kind of a transition from like the Grid Con era to like the new White Sox era. So I think that they have stuff that they're working with. It's not as bare bone as when you look at Charlotte, and we just rip on Charlotte like. But when the difference of the AAA team to the AA team and the single A team, it's night and day. Because in AAA, it's Coulson and a couple guys, and then everybody else is like just our journeyman. So I really enjoyed it, and I definitely I follow him, but he knows this. I never heard him talking, only his tweets, but he knows his stuff. So very happy that we had him on.
For sure. Yeah, I didn't think that the depth of the system was as deep as it apparently is. Like you said, we talk about a lot of the big names like Schultz and Montgomery all the time. Gonzo's been talking about Brian Ramos for 2 years nonstop, but there's a lot more than that. There's a lot more to be excited about at some of the lower levels. Like I'm totally sold on Grant Taylor. Like we've seen clips of Wolkow and we see some of the names that like there's super high potential, but for some reason, like Jacob Gonzalez had no hype. Like there's no one ever talks about him. I don't know if it's because Coulson's the big infield prospect or what, but like, it's good to know that he kind of reworked things and his numbers have been good this year. Grant Taylor. I'm more excited about the future than I was prior to today. So shout out to Elijah for that. Real quick before we get out of here, we kind of showed Junior's little poll, his impromptu poll earlier, but The Athletic did a player poll as well recently, and the results were not so great about the White Sox. 79 players in this Athletic poll were asked what organizations have bad reputations. The White Sox were the second most mentioned team, with 19 players saying that they had a bad reputation. Some of the quotes, not good. One player said, "Never heard a good thing." One player said, it sounds like no one wants to be there day in and day out. Like it's a grind just to show up to the ballpark. I couldn't imagine. One guy said, "It's not good over there. You can tell by how often there's turnover that it usually means something's going on." One person cited specifically poor communication. I don't think anybody was really surprised by these results. Jay, what's your reaction?
I mean, I'm not surprised either. Slob, like, look at what happened when Middleton got traded. The first time he spoke to a reporter, like, spilled all the beans. Like, nothing in that report is surprising. And and the sad part is, it's not even embarrassing no more. It's expected. Oh, ho, hum, a piece of shit White Sox, bad experience, player experience. It's just wash, rinse, and repeat on a national level at this point.
Well, I think it's ironic because when Ozzie in 2011, one of the reasons that that was used against him was they said nobody wants to come play here. And at the time, it was more of a matter of opinion, which we thought it was BS because of a couple players that had recently been acquired that did not fit Ozzie's mold. But now it's getting to a point where that was 13 years ago. So you can't even attach it to that. There's been multiple managers. The part where it's not surprising is, they're going to go and blame and say Tony La Russa if Tony was still the manager, but it's not the case. We've had 3 managers in the time frame that they've said that. So the part that's concerning is that players usually they judge on wins and losses, and that's where fans get lost. Because when you look at the other crappy teams, they weren't as close in the percentage of being talked shit about. Pardon my French. Like the other teams that lost,
it was a big gap from us.
It was a big gap. It wasn't like Colorado was like right there, like 0.1% away from the White Sox. So that's the part where it's concerning. Where number one, you have a spending issue where guys probably don't want to come here because you're the job that pays the worst. And now there's personnel issues where guys are saying, well, and the scary part is this, and this goes all the way down to the minor leagues, especially in the international signing, where you have a choice. If you're a player and you have a choice between the Chicago White Sox and the Kansas City Royals, okay? And I'm not talking about like I'm not talking about like a Bryce Harper, which is usually what we talk about, Bryce Harper, Manny Machado, and then picking. Like we're losing on guys that might be like a everyday player, just a regular guy making $6-7 million, of them saying, nah, I'm going to Kansas City. Chicago's a better city, but it's just going to be better for my career. And then that translates to the international signings of where kids have a choice between 2 organizations, and they don't pick the White Sox because they're like, I'm going to be better off with a different org. So that's the part where it's concerning. And we've had such a big focus on the names like Machado and Harper of why they didn't come here, and the money, and we get $300 million and we're going to get everybody here. Like, you're not getting anybody here making like regular player salaries. Like now it seems like nobody wants to come here. And that needs to be changed. That's what we talk about culture. You want to make it a place where people want to come, enjoy their time working, that you're getting paid fair wages, because it's not even about the city. Like you have an advantage of selling the city of Chicago just as like a great place to live at, just because what the city offers compared to other places as a metropolitan.
Especially in the summertime.
Especially in the summertime. You're not living here in the winter. So that's the crazy part of like where I would take that poll more serious if I was a front office than a lot of other stuff that's out there.
100%.
As Chris gets that athletic, 75 players have been surveyed. I'm having like an internal conversation with guys of like, and I'm not talking about gossiping. I'm talking about just stuff in general about, and again, it's the Pedro Grifol part is like the part where you always want to get, not even X's and O's, is do the players want to show up for this guy and the staff and everything in general? And that's what this is telling me, that no one wants to come here, and you're going to have to overpay for just even a regular, fill-in guy, because you're going to be competing against other teams. They're going to say, well, I want a couple million more because, I want to be in a better situation.
Gonzo, any thoughts on the player poll before we get into the upcoming schedule and picks to click?
Yeah, to me, that just tells me everything I need left of let's get rid of Grifol and allow Charlie to manage this until we know exactly what we're going to be doing going forward.
But Charlie's there.
So,
that's the part where you have to look at the whole mix, and you can start.
But how much say does he truly have?
Manager.
Well, at the end of the day, why Grifol's running this ship? I'll believe Charlie has much say in this right now. And Junior, you alluded to this last week with the whole Tozar comment that you made.
I would fire Tozar just because it's Pedro's friend, and I would just do it to make him mad. And like, even if my owner, and again, this is me being Ozzie Guillen Jr., and I advise in the front office, if I wanted to if my owner told me and said, you cannot fire the manager, I can't fire Slav, okay? and I know Slav's best friend is Gonzo and Jay, oh, trust me, if I can hire one of you two to get under Slav's skin, I'm going to do that. That's just business tactics. So I don't believe that Jerry has told the front office, you can't fire anyone. Okay, like I don't believe that. That's unrealistic. So I would have done something if I wanted him gone to change. There's been reports that he's not going anywhere. There's a bet going on. Everyone's got to like, when's the baby going to be due? I don't see him moving. I think this is beyond Pedro. I think that 75 players saying we don't want to go there, which is the part where the team previously made the mistake. Where if you ask 100 players if you like Ozzie Guillen or not, 95 are going to say, yeah, like he's okay. 10 are going to like, there's always going to be a group of people that are going to either love you, hate you, or like tolerate you. But they're still going to come work. The fact that the White Sox, like right now, you can even bring the most likable manager. They don't want to, it's not a good place to work. It's like just bad work culture. It's not even about the manager or the staff. It's like everything, it's rubbing them the wrong way. So there's things that are happening, either the way they deal with players. And I think this is something that's been happening for a while because unfortunately, the White Sox, for some reason, when people leave this team, they always come back though. But there's always like a 5 to 6 year period where it's like the worst breakup ever. And this is not just like now. This is going back to like the 1990s where, it's never like a nice breakup and guys come in and it's like, oh, it's like a feel-good story. It's like the worst case scenario. And then the player's like mad. And then a couple years later, like after a while, then the person comes back. Well, those players have friends. So they see how you like, do you guys think that not signing Mark Burley, okay, hasn't affected the White Sox long-term? Them not signing Sale and then not signing Cease? All the prospects that are there are saying, why would they sign me? Now they're not going to sign Crochet. So if I'm like Thorpe and these guys, I'm like, okay, my job is going to be here, pitch myself to a point where I'm going to probably either be traded or gone there because that's the culture of the team. The culture of the team is you build your career here early, but no one gets signed long-term. So I think that's just a repercussion of many, many years of the same thing happening over and over again. And that's just the culture, like just like in a regular business of, hey, this company has this culture, this company has that culture. That's been the White Sox because you could literally put it. If I was a starting pitcher and I really liked Chicago, I would be upset because I'm like, I'm not going to get signed unless, I give them such a team-friendly deal because they don't extend players in the pitching. And it's not an opinion, it's a fact. And I told you that, Gonzo. I said, why would Crochet be any different? Like they haven't done it. So why would he be any different? They didn't do it with Caesar. They didn't do it with Sale. They didn't do it with Mark Burley because they brought in another guy. So they haven't done it in a long time. So I could see that. I could see that being an issue.
They had this very short window where they were a destination from like winter of 18-19, moving into the 19 season. They ended up getting Keuchel. They were in on Wheeler, Machado, Harper, like all these discussions were happening. They were involved with big names. They were a team on the rise. They were a team that everybody knew was going to be good sooner than later because of all the youth and the prospects and blah, blah, blah. And they totally botched it. Like Yasmani Grandal and Dallas Keuchel are the two big, and I guess Andrew Benintendi. Like those are your big free agent splashes.
But I think I don't even think Benintendi counts because I don't think anybody was in him.
No, that was desperation.
That was just like, oh, hey, we called you. And you're like, oh my God, thank you. Like you just got offered the biggest money. So, but I feel like even that hurt them because again, the whole industry is looking at you and you haven't been able to land somebody. It's the same thing with like, well, how come they can't land somebody? Like
when Kenny Williams came out and said we offered more money to Machado, he totally shot himself in the foot and the whole organization because everyone now looks at you and says you are a joke.
Correct.
The Padres said $10 million, $30 million a year, $300 million guaranteed. Here you go. The White Sox said, well, we can do this and this and this deferral and this incentive. And no,
Tuesday, if you come to work on Tuesday, we'll give you an extra money. But Gonzo, that's what I told you when you were talking about Cease, and you texted me and you said, I don't think Cease was a Bannister guy. And I told you, I said, I think Cease was gone way before Bannister was even thought about getting hired. I think Cease has been gone for like 3 years. Like him mentally, meaning from a negotiation standpoint, I think that there was like communication like early on to try to get one of those team friendly deals, but then that was it. Like there was never like a continuous, like they never put an offer on him on the table where he was like, wow, Like now I'm calling Scott and saying, hey, Scott, like we have to consider this. And that's where that you have, like when you don't sign guys that are within your team, that's a weird situation. So like one thing that really helped Ozzy, and I'm going to use an example. When AJ Brzezinski came here to the White Sox, okay, and guys like Carl Everett that were like sometimes not considered for other teams, and they came here and they liked it, other players were like, damn, if those guys like it and they haven't liked it at other places. So it was easier to go and talk. Again, they were winning, but it was easier to go to talk to guys because it was like, wow, okay, there's something cool happening there. And that's where, and I think that when you landed Grandal and Keuchel, and those are big name guys, and those are guys that have a lot of influence in the game of baseball. So you started getting that. Now that's not the case where you're not getting guys like that because either a money situation or you're not just bringing them. It's just a negative, it's just negative. Like Tommy Pham is going to go and tell the team and DeJong and those guys how it was for the White Sox. Everything, food, culture, and some guys, people believe it or not, man, some guys have a lot of influence. And now it's easier. Now you got the text message. Like if I'm going to get traded somewhere, I'm going to ask them and say, hey, man, you played for this guy. What's expected, what's not expected. So fans have been thinking like the big name signings. I'm thinking they're even having problems getting like middle of the road to like just they're picking like what's ever left and saying, okay, there's 3 guys that are left that we haven't signed. Who do we take? And that has to change in order for them to, and that's just changed slowly. It won't change overnight, but you have to change that culture of moving forward and being able to do that. But it's not a good one. 75 players is a lot.
So no, 79 players were polled. Of the 79, 19 mentioned the White Sox. So unprompted. Right. Yeah,
that's a lot. I think that's a lot from a number standpoint.
Yeah, a quarter of the guys without, it's not like, what do you think of the White Sox? It's like, who has a bad reputation? And 1 out of every 4 said the White Sox.
That's a lot because it's not even guys. I'm assuming that maybe 1 or 2 guys might have played with the White Sox at some point.
Probably.
I mean, guys have never played with them. So it's like, you're just like saying like, who's got a bad reputation out there? And that's, it was like the Oakland Athletics in the movie, like the whole, like you have to pay for your Coke. Back then it was a joke. Like you went to Oakland, there was things that were a little different.
And no surprise, Oakland was the number 1 team listed in the
Oakland's
40.
broken, and Oakland's broken moving to another city. So the fact that you're competing, like that you're in that group, but you're not broke or moving to another city. That's the concern. Like I wish that if Colorado and the Washington Nationals and the Pirates and everybody was like in Miami Marlins were all in the same group, then you're like, okay, it's like a losing thing. People just want to talk about who's winning, but none of those teams got mentioned.
All right. Last thing, Gonzo, before we get out of here, take us through the upcoming schedule. Who are the other teams coming up that are going to beat the White Sox in a series? And then you can give me my crown for picks.
Why do you got to say it like that?
Is it wrong?
No.
Okay, then.
So tomorrow we wrap up the Seattle series with Crochet and Castillo. Friday through Sunday, we're still on the road. We go to Arizona. Friday's Flexen versus Nelson. Saturday is Fetty versus to be determined. They might call up Ciccione again. And then Sunday is Thorpe versus Montgomery, who just got back to Arizona. And Kettle Marte is batting .279, 13 home runs, 35 ribbies. Out of those 3 games, I got the Sox winning 1 of 2. Potentially that win coming in the Saturday matchup with Fetty. You guys have any comments before I go to the Houston series?
Well, against Arizona, Ciccione pitched today, I believe, gave up 7 earned to the Angels at home. I'm really I'm concerned about all the series, but Arizona just got a cog in their lineup back. Gerardo Perdomo. He's gonna settle down the shortstop position. Gonna get Eugenio Suarez out of the lineup and Blaze Alexander to third base. Corbin Carroll is slowly but surely picking it up to a point to where he's gonna be a problem when the White Sox get to the desert. I don't think we win a game, to be honest with you. And Arizona Diamondbacks probably got one of the best relievers in the game in Justin Martinez. He's Mason Miller light. I don't think it's any good news when the White Sox get into that Diamondback bullpen. They're pretty good with with Ginkle getting healthy. Seawald has been fresh all year. So, I mean, it's just a bad situation, to be honest with you. They don't win a game.
Survive.
So after the Arizona series this weekend, they come back home to face Houston. Tuesday, Blanco versus Cannon, who just went scoreless tonight in Seattle. And
let's pause and
Yeah.
talk about Jonathan Cannon. 6 scoreless innings, 3 hits. Granted, the Mariners' offense is not very good, but 6 scoreless, 6 strikeouts, 1 walk, 3 hits, only 91 pitches to get through 6.
Good for him. That again, Seattle's not the New York Yankees.
Let's see it every 5th day.
You do that every 5th day, your manager will see a lot better. And the reason that I'm worried about in a lot of these series where I would take, 1 game or 2 games and not get swept because of talent, that's where the Pedro factor comes in. Where the games that I know that they should win, he makes you lose them. That at least gives you a worse chance to not try to win. So like right now, the game's in the 7th inning, game is tied. Great start from the pitcher. Like right now, if I was like a hardcore fan in it, and I took action on the White Sox because it's nice plus money. But my only worry is what move is Pedro going to make? And I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't feel like, oh, he's going to mess up on a move. That should not be the case. And that's why I think
he doesn't have many good moves to go to in the bullpen. To be fair to him,
I'm not talking about bullpen only. I'm talking about like if there's like an opportunity for like a pinch hitting situation. Like I'm not even talking about actually winning the game. I'm actually talking about putting yourself in the situation to give yourself a better chance of winning. Because I think when you're managing, even if you make the moves, like let's say you just make the moves like straight up, like using a computer. If you do that, you're gonna get like more positives than negatives on giving yourself a shot to win games. When you start doing things like not pinch hitting, not pinch running, doing things like in that certain way, that's where it kind of like starts coming back and getting you.
So not to cut you off, OJ, I just want to bring up the other night when Kopech got in trouble and they brought in Jordan Leisure like after him. Like that's a situation to where like I don't understand. I know it's hindsight. I don't understand why would you bring in Leisure after Kopech when Leisure is already in a system to where he's built to pitch before him. Now you got a contact reliever in a situation to where he can't give up contact. It's almost like you're handcuffing him with that ill-advised decision. It sucks.
And then Wednesday's matchup is Valdez versus Crochet. That's the 2 games before we hit next show. Kyle Tucker's, I think, 2nd right now in AL Cy Young right now.
Won't be in the lineup.
266. Yeah, he's not going to be in the lineup, but he's right. The stats at the moment is 266, 19 home runs, 40 ribbies. It's amazing where he's on a stretch right now, but he's injured. He just got injured recently. But that wraps up the Houston series at home.
Before we go, I just want to say, watch out for Alex Bregman is heating up right now. And also Yordan Alvarez is heating up also. Pedro Grifol, if you're listening, hold up 4 fingers. Just hold up 4 fingers.
Oh, the White Sox are great at letting one guy who you don't want to let beat the shit out of you.
I know, that's why I'm
Ask Jose Ramirez.
Advice. I'm giving some really good advice. Walk Yordan Alvarez.
There's a very good chance Yordan Alvarez hurts the hell out of the White Sox in that series.
I will be betting Jordan Alvarez home run and multiple bases versus.
He's on Gonzo's fantasy team. We don't need that type.
Well, I'm not. By the way, I'm not playing Gonzo this week, so I'm not worried. But I'm just saying this is a series for the Houston Astros is very important. This is where you come in and you say we're facing a weaker opponent. This is where we can get hot. That's why Alex was so mad at Cora. He got ejected because he was thinking sweep the whole time. He was thinking like we're going to roll through these guys and get back in the positive column. So that's what Houston's thinking. They're thinking that. And Jordan Alvarez needs a series like that. And the White Sox are they need to be careful with him.
I'm happy Alvarez and Bergman are going to get hot this week or next week, beginning of next week. All right, Slav, roll us to picks.
What?
Like, who won? Did I win?
Picks to click.
We know who won. Just go ahead and tell
Yep.
us.
So I gotta admit, I hope that Slavko picks Vaughn like another 3 more times at least this season, because our boy Vaughn hit 3 home runs this past week, pushing his total from 4 to 7. He's starting to see the ball more, and he's off the board. He gave Slav his first victory of the season with his second pick of the season.
First of many. I'm coming for your head, Gonzo.
The standings are: I got 5. Junior or Jay's got 3.
You got 5?
I got 5.
Yeah, he's playing
What?
himself.
You fucking cheater. Yeah,
Jay's got 3, and Junior and Slav. Well, Slav, you just tied Junior, so you guys are
I
at
did
1.
have one. I'm horrible. I want Slav to come and win. I'm all fantasy. I just do whipping in fantasy. By the way, you're 3 home runs away from being able to talk. You're 3 home runs away. No, I actually know, because it's Andrew Vaughn and the bet's on Burger. Yeah. Andrew Vaughn's gonna reach 10 home runs before Jake Berger. There you go, White Sox haters.
So the order goes Slav, Jay, Junior, and then me. Slav
And Luke Rayleigh just went deep.
Oh, you're a loser.
So put it this way. So like if my guy gets sent down, can I pick somebody else? That's
No.
another thing. The guy that I picked is like they're like, I think they see the show and they're like, oh, Junior picked this guy. Let's just not pick him.
No, you guys screwed me last year. You gave me an auto pick of someone who like got put on the injured list.
For Raymond.
Whatever. All right. So I get first pick. Vaughn is off the table, right?
Yep.
Wow.
He's off.
That's a
Okay.
huge moment.
So part of me wants to like think revenge for Corey Lee or Jokes from in Houston, but my brain is telling me that very stupidly I'm going to go Andrew Benintendi because he's coming off the IL, and Arizona, Houston. I think he'll be fresh. I hope he'll be fresh and get a few base hits.
Who did they? Or sorry, Jay, you're up.
Paul DeYoung.
DeYoung.
That's sad.
Why? Because I picked the best hitter in the lineup.
No, it's sad that he is the best hitter in the lineup.
Oh, so because I wanted to bring this up real quick since you mentioned Benintendi. So Benintendi is now back, but they sent down Duke Ellis for the roster move. That was, I know, Slav, that was your favorite at the moment.
He's very fast. That's about it. I hope to see him back in the big leagues one day.
He stole that one base.
Yeah, it was a good time. That was a really cool moment.
Junior, you're up.
You know what? My guy did great last week. The other guys just did a little bit better. Gavin had a great week. He just went 2 bombs. I'm riding with Gavin Sheets again. Can't get mad at him because the other guy just hit 1 more. I'm going with Gavin. He's going to be there. I don't think Pedro hates him.
Sheets.
So I like Sheets. Sheets is he's on my team next year. So a big Sheets guy.
Good selection with Gavin Bonds.
Don't call him.
No, I'm giving the nickname to him because of our friend of the show, Brian Knights.
I know, that's why any person that he claims, ever since they say build the bean, the Rake Club, all that, it is a kiss of death.
Kiss of
death. Don't say that. Hopefully, by the way, if Gavin did get on the sauce, he probably would hit like 70.
So my selection, since I'm picking 4th, I'm gonna pick the worst hitter of them all, and that's gonna be Luis Robert Jr. Since you guys allowed him to slide on me. That is my birthday pick.
How old are you?
I am 29. Let me update these picks.
To be young again.
29. I wasn't even married then. I wasn't even engaged.
Oh, that's where
Same.
that's the boat I'm in right now.
Yeah.
Really?
My hairline was about this long.
Good thing, sir. I didn't hear that.
Trust me.
I don't think Gonzo has a chance in hell this week and pick to click. I'm gonna just put that out.
And Tara's a dangerous one though. He's still the best player on the team, like meaning stat wise.
No.
Potential wise.
Paul DeYoung is the best player on the team.
I'm saying potential wise.
Statistically, it's not inaccurate.
Statistically not the situation, but
And he had 2 home runs this week.
All right. Before we get out of here, quick shout outs. I'm going to go ahead and shout out Elijah for being an incredible guest and hyping us up a little bit on this White Sox farm system, which is deeper and better than at least I thought. So shout out to him. Happy birthday to you, Gonzo, and happy belated birthday to Sierra Santos, our friend at MLB Network. I think she just had her birthday either yesterday or the day before. So those are my shout outs for tonight.
Okay. I'll go. First of all, happy birthday, Gonzo. You still look the same height as you've seen in person from this screen. So you're actually drawing the scale. I want to give a shout out to my boss at my day job, Eric. We had a record week in sales last week, so we celebrated promptly. Shout out to you, big bro, and we're going to continue to grind and hit these milestones.
Good for you.
Good for you.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Gonzo? I'll go. Shout out to Elijah. I learned a lot today. I'm not going to lie. I love when I'm learning, especially about the White Sox farm system. I'm very excited because he actually just wrote me back about my guy who's a catcher in like single A where Leland manages, and good report. And then shout out, if you guys want Ozzie Guillen inspired gear, we have 2 designs out there with more to come. Go to the Guillen Grid and get yourself Ozzie Guillen inspired merchandise. Guillen approved. Ozzie approved.
My favorite one is I'm a White Sox fan, unfortunately, and it is got to be the truest quote of all time.
By the way, it's funny because usually when you try to make merchandise for someone, usually the people making the merchandise are the one trying to push the person that you're going to use to be edgy. His merchandise that he's trying to go out there would have been amazing in 1975, 1980. Today, I'm like that. I was like, that one will get you in trouble. That won't be good. But it's cool. We're out there. We're getting designs, so we're gonna do a couple more designs. I was kind of busy this week, but using my artistic ability. But it was cool. The first ones came out pretty cool, and he makes it easy making quotes and whatnot. So we got a couple going there.
My shout out, I'm gonna give a shout out to Soraya for giving me a great birthday. We went to a place similar to Fogo de Chao last night for dinner.
Hell yes.
I had a nice golden steak that was a special going for that evening. And then also I woke up to a Southpaw cameo that I was not expecting at all. I think one of the funniest parts of the cameo was, I hope that you don't turn this into a Blackout Show evening. Oh, Southpaw, you make me laugh. I have to give another shout out. I gave him a shout out last week. I'm gonna give him one this week for actually coming on the show this evening, and that's Elijah. That was a good 30-minute conversation for the pregame for this show, going through all those names. And he was actually hoping that he would stay on for our segmented episodes, and I told him we'll have to get him on later in the year so he can go through that with us. And I think that's gonna have to wrap it up. Junior, do we have any? I don't believe we have anything official for next week, but there's a rumor that
he just made it seem to text him 10 minutes after we get on the show, and he's like, "You ask, I'll answer." So I texted Don Cooper. Best Coop quote. I said, I want to have you on. 80% of the stuff I know about pitching, I learned from you. And he goes, that's good. Throw the other 20 away. No, we want to talk. I want to talk. And I told him, I was like, I'm not going to talk about like stuff past dramatic. I just want to talk about like his knowledge of like how he views pitching from where he's at. Because I know he's watching games, and then like a couple analytics, probably questions and whatnot, but really pick his brain. And I think Don Cooper is, even if he's not the major league pitching coach, meaning the guy that's on that bench, I would have him around my team in spring training roving, because probably one of the best mental guys. When I say mental guys, is connecting at a level personally with the pitcher where what he's giving you communication wise, you understand. And it's really hard because you're connecting with guys making millions, guys making minimum, Hispanic guys, American guys, you know, different guys in different points in their careers. And I used to joke around with him and call him the great motivator, because you'd come from the bullpen session and you'd be like, you feel like you're the greatest pitcher ever. And then he'd tell my dad and be like, he's got nothing. So he was very good in his analysis of players and whatnot. He's just very knowledgeable. So I want to have him. And he's just overall funny. He's just a funny dude.
Hilarious dude.
He's probably one of the, I would probably say, top 5 funniest people I've ever been around the game of baseball. Just like nonchalant. Like, he's just a very interesting man of everything that he says. So hopefully we get him on. So I'm gonna be pinging him. We'll ping him and get him on. So I'll start bothering him from today. But we had a good conversation. He's doing great, but it's really cool bringing in, like, getting those guys to talk about pitching and again, talking about, we had a whole list today of, like, you know, what do you look for a guy when you're a prospect and making that jump, and how many years, because he's, for better or for worse, he's actually done it where he's had a young staff, and he did it multiple times where he didn't have, everyone talks about the years that he had success, but he built those staff, like Burley, Garland, like he built pitchers, John Dinks, you know, like guys that had careers in the big leagues, he built them. Chris Sale, he was there in their first couple of years. So that takes a lot. That's something that, you know, that knowledge is really hard to, you know, to replicate with all those years in baseball. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it happens.
So fingers crossed for some more special guests coming up on the Blackout Show. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Blackout Show CHI, Instagram, Facebook. Go on YouTube and subscribe to the Guillen Grid. So every time we go live every week, you get a notification. Anytime a show comes up or we get a special guest or whatnot. For Gonzo, the birthday boy, for Jay, for Ozzy Jr., and our special guest tonight, Elijah Evans. As always, thank you so much for watching, listening, and consuming the Blackout Show. We will see you next week.